capitalism. All of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know, Zach.
It's a tough one. I
It's
know.
really hard.
And maybe comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everyone, to Bread Theory. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Today, joining me as per usual is Dan Platt of the Three Left Show and What's Left in Albany. We're going to be continuing our series on Utopias. How you doing tonight, Dan?
What's left in Albany? Oh, I'm all right. Lots has happened last 2 weeks. So I've
Do
been
tell.
kind of pushed into. I got another offer from
Okay.
another state of New York department. So I'm going to be in the SUNY admin. That's our university system.
Oh,
So I'm moving to a different building, still in the same downtown neighborhood. But I'm leaving the building particularly so I can make well, now I guess it's an ungraceful exit because there's no such thing as a graceful exit from a
sure.
volunteer situation where you hate who you're working with. Um, no, like you work on a team and you're just ignored by the person in charge, and they don't even
That sucks.
know that's like the problem. Like they're the problem, and they just see everybody as an enemy or something. But um, when I'm quitting, and she's like, and to think I had you in my car, like her car was a sacred temple that I violated, even though she was getting reimbursed for driving me home. So really, it's like you
Getting
weren't even
reimbursed
doing
for
me a
driving.
favor.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
gotta get to do that.
Own self-interest
I
anyway.
guess she didn't have to, but she probably would have put in the request to get reimbursed for the drive home anyway.
Jeez.
Hill. She basically said she did a text to me with "youth is an ugly thing," which I don't know if that's from scripture or Cicero or what. I typed it into Google and I didn't get anything. So.
Oh, really?
So, but it was definitely she was quoting something, but it was after the feedback of pushback on how terrible she is at communicating and getting across the information that one needs because it assumes everyone knows. Anyway, I don't want. Let's not take time ranting about interpersonal stuff.
We don't need to dwell.
But this is. She also represents everything that could be wrong with business unions, and how you can keep the wheels turning, and for the sake of keeping wheels turning, the ability to have union events regularly, because some departments don't even have a union president. They have no union team on the ground. So it's like, so for the sake of having someone who has stayed in it as an officer, things are just allowed to work their way, and people come and go, and they don't really like working with them, but because they're already there and they're not leaving, you accommodate, and there's no conflict resolution team I think you can rely on either, because the business union deals with conflicts the same way a business does, with a grievance procedure and a replication of the criminal justice system, but it's not like interpersonal shit isn't solved in courts. If you steal from the union, it could be, or discipline, but like, how do you discipline somebody who just uses speech to text, so all of their communications don't make any sense, kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh man.
So so I'm leaving. It's a small promotion, more or less, still
Well, there you go.
support, but I'm going to be in the data analysis floor.
Data analysis.
So these are the nerds who are getting all the admissions data for New York and processing, and of course, a bunch of other data sets, I assume. And I'll be their support staff there.
Is that music coming through on your end?
It is. Is
Okay.
that from outside?
That's from outside. I think I may just shut the window.
Yeah.
It seems to just be creeping up louder and louder. So 1 second.
Are they? Okay.
They're 3 floors down from me, out in the parking lot, bumping that.
Yeah.
So.
But still, there's always that balance between privacy and some type of acoustic isolation and the ability to live in an urban environment with all of the perks and advantages of being in a city. And it's hard to know what the solution is, except that all of the people who want to party should just live in the party district, and the people who want peace and quiet or raise families. But of course, maybe you want both. You're okay with people playing music around you, but not all the time.
Yeah.
You
Sometimes
want to be able
it's
to
just
flick a switch. Flick a switch and make yourself acoustically isolated.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's pretty good. Like I don't think I can hear it too much anymore, so I think we'll be okay for now. But yeah, I don't mind people playing music at all.
Yeah.
I just
I don't hear it. When the window actually stops it, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because in the pad in my neighborhood, it does something, but not always a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
At least when I was in the basement, it didn't do anything.
Oh, I'm sure it's just shaking the whole ground then. So. All right.
So the video we're going to cover today, and we'll see how much fun or not fun we have with it, is a Doha debate from a year or so ago. It features a eco-socialist named Jason Hinkle. You'll see more of him. And he's been a part of eco-socialist panels. So I think I was linked to this from them. And he's facing off, and it shows like the 3-way fight of leftism versus liberalism versus capitalism, or versus the right. Though in this case, there is no fascist or right-winger represented. It's more like you have the 3-way fight maybe on the left in America between entryist reformers, independent reformers, and independent leftists.
Okay. No, that's interesting.
Or independent reformers being well, maybe entryist reformers, and then actual independent leftists.
Sure.
Or non-independent left, I suppose, represented by a journalist who's very much critical of the status quo, but not an anti-capitalist. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. You have people who, are very much critical. They're anti-corporate, maybe. That's the distinction usually used. Or
not a corporatist, but a capitalist.
I get used. Yeah, I'm a capitalist, but not a corporatist.
Right.
I don't want corporate capitalism. I'm for capitalism, not corporate capitalism. Or corporate communism. Yeah, I'm a communist, but not for this
corporate communism. Oh, wow, there's a term. Art.
It was used by Fox News for reference. Does corporate I gotta, you know what, I'm gonna bring that up and I gotta make a drop out of it. Corporate communism. Because since others have not, so.
Well, there you go. There's a opportunity just waiting. All right, well, Let's pull that up. So is this the starting point, this 5 minutes and a half? I think that's...
I guess. There's a lengthy intro because they've got this tech. They're going around. It's like, a full show. It's in production. It's like, let's go to Katie in the audience.
Sure.
Oh, yes, I'm here in the audience. And now everyone's very excited for the debate. And, we got, And we've got the tech. We're gonna be doing some polling. We're gonna set,
Sure.
Oh, it's like, oh yeah, no. They keep checking in with her. It's like, oh, what's the online chatter look like? The online chatter is very busy, Diane. It's it's everyone's very very talking. There's so much happening. They're very excited about what's going on. This discussion. They're throwing so many ideas out. You'll see. It's
Yeah.
great.
Okay. So should I start from the very beginning then? Or do you want me to skip ahead a little?
Opening remarks.
Opening remarks. Start.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could do the opening. It's just saying capitalism.
Okay.
It's got problems.
When I first saw the title of this, I thought it said Jackson Hinkle, and I was like, "Oh my God, what have you gotten me into?"
Person. That's a different person.
But this is Jason Heichel.
Heichel. Sorry, I said it wrong.
No problem. But bullet dodge there.
Dear world, we need to talk.
So dramatic.
Welcome to Qatar, and welcome to Doha Debates, where we are searching for solutions.
We need to talk
global
about your
challenges.
slavery problem, okay?
Yeah, we can probably talk about that too while we're at it.
We have to rethink the wild beast that is capitalism.
Shut up, Bono.
All you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth.
The point is not about growth. The fact is that how we redistribute that growth.
There are still too many people who are left out of that recovery and acceleration of growth.
It's about power that's concentrated in the hands of the wealthy and well-connected. Power that is used to benefit the rich
Look at the
and
snake.
kick dirt in the face of everyone else.
It's been almost 250 years since The Wealth of Nations was published. Free markets and capitalism would lift the poor and increase prosperity for all. But today, is economic growth advancing opportunities for everyone, or is it creating more social and economic injustice and destroying our planet? Was Karl Marx right when he predicted that the capitalist system will eventually collapse and destroy itself? That is our debate here in Doha.
Please welcome your Doha Debates moderator, Ghida Fakhri.
Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to the fifth in our series of New Doha Debates. Today, as we just said, we'll be taking on the challenge of capitalism as a sustainable economic model. Can humanity prosper without growth, or must we pursue growth and suffer the consequences, the side effects, in the interest of improving the lives of millions, even billions of people around the world? Some say a free market economy means the poor become less poor. Others believe that growth is actually widening inequalities and destroying our environment. A third camp argues that transformation of that system is possible. More regulations, greater inclusivity, and a less hypocritical version of capitalism is in order. Well, today we'll be hearing from three experts, each with a very different idea for a solution and a distinct approach to a subject that is hotly contested in protests and civil unrest across the world. Then we'll be heading into our majlis, where we'll try to build some consensus, if we can, across our differences. We are live from Northwestern University here in Doha, Qatar, and we're also live streaming on Facebook, Now This, YouTube, and Twitter. We, of course, want you to join the conversation as well. So let's go straight to our correspondent, Nelufar. Tell us everything we need to know.
Thank you, Ghida. Yes, as ever, I welcome you. Those of you who are watching online, we have a lot of debate to get through. Our speakers are ready, Ghida is ready, and our student audience is ready. But I'm always keen to hear from you wherever you are in the world. If you're watching
So yeah, the fact that the audience is students plays a big part in what happens. Sure. And the fact that they included an actual honest-to-God leftist as a participant. Good to see. Yeah.
That is quite the embroidered outfit she has on.
It's fly.
Yeah.
I mean, the shoulder poofs pop the most to me.
Yeah. The lacy collar. Wow. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
touch.
Oh, yeah,
if you
true.
feel passionately about what is being said on stage and you have your comments or questions,
She
just
really
use that
stands out in the
hashtag
dark
Dear World,
room.
or make sure.
Right. Well, and nobody else is dressed that way. Everyone else has
Everyone's wearing dark colors. Yeah.
either. Yeah.
Oh well, she's dressed for her,
Just for her role, I suppose.
You tag us in your posts. Make sure you tag us in your posts at Doha Debates. I nearly forgot that then. And we will be able to find your tweets, and Rida, I'll be able to present them to you so you can engage with them as well.
And I look forward to that, Nell. But before we begin, let's take a quick look and see what we actually mean by capitalism.
Capitalism is essentially the only economic system around in the world today, and it's at a bit of a crossroads. The main thing that sets a capitalist system apart from previous systems is the reinvestment of money made from selling things back into production.
This is called growth, and it is the main economic goal of capitalism.
On average, people have an easier life than a few centuries ago. From an era of peasant farmers, capitalism brought us here, where a tiny robot vacuums your floor every day. It's improved the lives of tens of millions.
Unless you look at the stats about how
Hugely
peasants actually worked less hours.
Right.
Add
Yeah.
it all up.
Yeah.
They had more festival days, and you
More
had the
holidays,
winter. You weren't working that hard in the winter.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If you're in a
But you had
agrarian
more
society.
precarity out of it.
For sure. Yeah. You're pretty much at the whim of the lords and other lords too, who might seek
And
to
the
steal
weather,
you.
the weather too.
And the weather too, for sure.
reducing poverty, illiteracy, and infant mortality. But it's not working for everyone. And the gap between the rich and the poor is widening. One way to address the problem would be to adopt a kinder capitalism built with stronger safety nets that can help look after the disadvantaged and the vulnerable. Another option is for capitalism to evolve into something else, like socialism. Of course, a viable option is to continue on the path that we're currently on, to prioritize growth over everything else. What capitalism evolves into will affect nearly every human being on the planet. The good news is that we can choose how society is structured, but we need to decide carefully and soon.
So then,
Now, of course, what's usually left out is how that choice is made.
Right.
Now, it's usually put out there that that choice is made through elections or participating in the established process.
Right.
But if you are transforming, you actually have to be acting outside of those processes.
Yeah, eventually you run into...
Hold on.
Oh, no problem. All right, well, we'll continue ahead in the video as Dan takes his call.
Or do we rethink fundamentally what capitalism means, which is obviously something different to different people? So what are then the arguments for and against capitalism? Well, joining us here today, it's a pleasure to have three experts on the topic: Jason Hickel, Amina Gurib Fakim, and Anan Girdardars. And as always, we also have with us, joining us in the audience, Dr. Govinda Clayton, our connector.
Dr. Govinda Clayton is a senior researcher in peace processes within the Center for Security Studies at ETH Zurich. Dr. Clayton's research interests include negotiation, mediation, conflict management, and civil war. As our connector, Dr. Clayton will provide guidance on identifying common ground.
I don't like the way the text is flowing around, though. What do you think of that?
It's a bit distracting. Yeah. And I also don't like the forced, we got to find some common ground on this sort of thing. Some ideas are just bad ideas, and they have run their course, and there's no common ground to be found with them. So trying to force it just
It's
seems
interesting to think about. When I took the conflict resolution training at work, and it's all about the personal, okay? Because some conflicts are created by the structure of the bureaucracy, right? Or the fact that the bureaucracy exists in the first place. But let's just say we're just talking about interpersonal shit. And in the ways to solve problems through avoidance, giving ground, then compromise. But these things are not resolution. Resolution is the ultimate goal, and that takes more input, or they use the term investment. There's a low investment solution, which may be short term, but not working long term.
Effective, sure.
Because you can leave a problem, like, I can just resign my post because I'm not enjoying working with the president. But I am, of course, not looking to resolve the issue long term, because to me, there's not going to be a long term.
Not going to be it, yeah.
If I had to keep being treasurer in some way, like if there was a contract, or one of the things that, of course, irked me in my way out, she's like, this is a job. Like, she's trying to keep me around. Like, I should give her my 2 weeks notice. But you see, I've taken a job, and at the moment we're preparing for a summer picnic, which is really early. It's like the first weekend of June.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And so we're selling tickets, and that means collecting money, and that means the money should go to me. But the rules also say that money has to be like counted up with 2 people, so money isn't getting pocketed.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
And it has to be deposited in our bank account within a day.
Sure.
Now, there's all these rules that she expects or imposes on me to follow, but she does not follow many rules herself.
I see.
Which is one of the things that just, drives me up the wall, and it doesn't slow her down to point out, like, when she's not following rules or something. So, like, she was talking like, oh, this is a job, Dan. You can't just leave like that. You got to follow through, stay for the picnic, or do those stuff. Like, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be able to go. I mean, I could maybe finagle it, but at this point, I don't care, because 2 days ago you insulted
what's
me.
really the point? Yeah.
You insulted me, and I'm not letting you get away with it. It's as simple as that. You've poked me, you pushed my buttons the last time. I've told you, don't tease me, or whatever. Don't call me like, oh, these young guys, they don't know what they're doing. You can't keep saying that around me, mumbling it under your breath or something like that. Because I don't know how. I don't fill out a check properly according to you. Even though when she's trying to correct me, she's making mistakes, and it's that kind of bullshit. She's always flapping about. So okay, let's continue.
Continuing on.
But yeah, some conflicts
some conflicts. There's just no point.
Aren't worth resolving, but resolving them is high investment, and that's what this is meant to convey, though. Just to talk about good faith.
Building and consensus.
So then, that is everyone. Time now to hear from our first speaker.
It's like The Voice. He's got a job.
Our first speaker, Jason Hickel, is an anthropologist and author whose most recent book is The Divide, a brief guide to global inequality and its solutions. Originally from Swaziland, Jason focuses on global inequality and ecological economics.
Done. Sort of a TED Talk presentation.
Growth is
It
killing
does
us.
give that vibe,
It
yes.
is the single greatest driver of climate breakdown and ecological collapse. We urgently need to shift to a post-growth, post-capitalist economy. Right now, we're trapped in an economic system that is structurally dependent on growth at an exponential rate, year after year, with no identifiable endpoints. Capitalism requires ever-increasing levels of extraction and production and consumption just to stay afloat, chewing through our living planet in the process. And virtually all of this crisis is being driven by rich countries. The science is clear. If we want to avoid catastrophic climate breakdown and reverse ecological degradation, rich countries need to lead with radical emissions reductions, getting to zero by 2030, while dramatically scaling down resource use. And to achieve this, We need to abandon our mindless march towards growth. Now, my colleagues here might say we needn't worry. All we need to do is make growth green, switch to renewable energy, and we can keep growing forever. But scientists firmly reject this idea. Yes, we need a Green New Deal with massive public investments in a clean energy transition. But we cannot transition quickly enough to stay within the carbon budget if we keep growing the economy at existing rates. More growth means more energy demands, and more energy demands makes it impossible to decarbonize in the short time we have left. The only way to make it work is by actively reducing our energy use and scaling down industrial production. This will make it easier to accomplish a rapid transition to renewables, halting climate breakdown while allowing our planet's ecosystems to regenerate. So what does this look like? Well, we could legislate for longer product lifespans and rights to repair. If our goods last twice as long, we will use half as many without any loss to our quality of life. We can free our public spaces from advertising, liberating all of us from the pressure to consume stuff we don't need or even really want. We can choose to scale down the production of destructive products like McMansions, SUVs, arms, and beef. Reducing unnecessary production means freeing people from the drudgery of needless labor. And by shortening the working week and rolling out a job guarantee with living wages, we can ensure that everyone has access to meaningful work and dignified lives. Some say we need economic growth to achieve social progress. But that is a lie. The vast majority of income from growth gets captured at the very top, while most people see very little benefits. Once we wake up to this madness, the solution becomes clear. We already live in an abundant economy. We don't need more growth. We can achieve progress right now without any growth at all, simply by sharing what we already have more fairly. Justice is the antidote to growth. So we can maintain our mindless devotion to the dusty dogmas of the status quo, sacrificing our future and our planet on the altar of capital. Or we can throw off the shackles of this irrational system and build a better, more just, more ecological economy for the 21st century. We have a choice before us: growth or life. Thank you.
See, I wonder about this approach a little bit, and how, like, a normie with very little background in all of this is going to take it. Because I'm imagining what I would hear is, what are you going to take away from me? We need to use less stuff, have less things, have, you know, I get to go less.
You said
places.
If things last twice as long, you're not using less stuff.
Yeah, but he talked about less consumerism. So are you going to take away my, you know, video games or my?
And if you're going by train and not plane, you can do all the traveling you want with less carbon.
Right. But he's not saying that
people like
up front.
People like my union president said emphatically she will never take the train.
That too. Yeah, it was
but that's her problem.
Maybe
that's not the fucking ecology's problem.
Well, true, but you also got to sell it to people as well. Like, enough people have to be
in the marketplace of ideas, right? If we're going to follow the paradigm of the marketplace of ideas, which we shouldn't. I hope we're using this glibly. Because this is a very precise environment here that socialism, his pitch wins in this crowd of students. Okay? Not boomers, not Gen Xers, not consumers. These are all people who see themselves as citizens. They're there as citizens, not consumers. So people only see themselves as consumers. So of course there's some mind shifting to do, but that's why maybe we tweak his pitch, because obviously our pitch will always be, the pitches can always change based on audience.
Oh, of course.
So he's giving a pitch to students. Our pitch can be to consumers, and we can keep in the right to repair, the freedom of consumption without waste, without having to spend thousands of dollars of your hard-earned money on crap that breaks or things you don't really need. And people are annoyed by advertising. So we could focus on the advertising bans, campaigns. Those are physical material campaigns we can do. And they are sort of winnable. The only concern is the income that maybe a city loses by not having billboards on buses. But that's easily filled because that income is very replaceable. It's just put on when you don't want to make the tough choices of kicking Lamar out of your city.
Well, sure. And if you invest more in mass transit, you're not having to spend on expensive roads all the time. So
stuff like
savings
that.
But
yeah, I mean, I just
I like the way that you phrased it more than the way that he is.
We shouldn't let the urge to concern troll our messaging
True.
stop us from even having a message, which is what I've seen in leftist scenes here and there and everywhere.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'm not.
Because he doesn't use the word socialist. He doesn't use the word socialist. He does use certain policies that we've covered, like job guarantee, and the Green New Deal, which just means lots of public investment. But of course, in America, public investment means highways. The fact that Green New Deal is like half highways. We can't win with the American government as it is.
That's true. Fair.
In elections.
All right. Well, let's continue and see what the next person says.
Our second speaker, Amina Gurib-Fakim, is a biodiversity scientist who served as the 6th president of Mauritius from 2015 to 2018. Amina was the first woman to be head of state in her native country.
Capitalism is the world's preeminent system of economic organization, yet in the court of public opinion, capitalism is on the ropes. You've heard my fellow guests talk about the flip side of capitalism, with its effect on whole economies and people. Let me try and paint a different picture. Growth matters, so does its quality. Without growth, there can be no sustainable development.
What do you think that guy in the curly hair said?
I was.
Whoa, man! What a hag, right?
Yeah. I don't know. But
never mind.
I'm no.
I'm being mean.
I cut that too, but
being humor.
Yeah, without growth, there cannot be any sustainable systems. Okay. Seems a bit contradictory, but we'll see what she says.
I have seen the positive transformation linked to economic growth. My island nation country has been transformed since independence 51 years ago. It is now an upper middle income country, and we have done this by prioritizing economic pillars with people-centered investments. Economic growth fuels the economy and improves livelihoods. Is it perfect? Hardly. Are there still problems? Unequivocally, yes. We have to confront issues like chronic poverty, diseases, and now struggle against the vagaries and hardship caused by changing climate. We know
as if chronic poverty is like a disease.
Shared prosperity and more open economy help us tackle them. So, in direct opposition to protectionism and isolationism that is coming out of the United States, Africa has gone the other way and has created the world's largest free trade area since the establishment of the World Trade Organization in 1995. It came into operation in May 2019. I can safely say that Africa is on the move. When I say on the move, I mean with economic growth, the contested subject of tonight's debate. In recent years, Africa's average annual GDP growth has consistently outpaced the global average and is expected to remain at least 6%.
Now, why would you use GDP when it's so agreed in academic circles that GDP shouldn't be used to talk about economic productivity or progress of any kind?
Right. Yeah, she's just trying to...
And yeah, it's still used. And it's still used. And it's so It's maddening that
slip
it's
it in.
still used.
Oh yeah, I really.
It's not just
quickly-
her, of course, but it's anyone.
Of course, yeah, because that's the coin of the realm. Basically, that's the way that things are talked about.
Yeah.
Or have been, but yeah, that's a very poor measure. Because I just looked up quickly, Mauritius's income inequality, and it has been widening amidst all of this increase in its economic growth, so-called.
Now, where is the island of Mauritius? Is this one of the islands off of Madagascar, or is it? Where is it?
Let's find that out as well.
She has a North African look of her, but I don't want to assume.
Yeah. Let's take a look.
I know. Yakko's World Country song has.
Yeah, it's a little bit out of date now. It's in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, I figured that.
Let's see. I just need to look at a map because I'm not.
But it's not the Maldives,
No.
Otherwise, that was my assumption that she was Maldives, but Maldives is really concerned about climate change because all their islands are sinking.
Yeah,
or rather,
I was wondering about that too. It being an island nation, how much concern are they? Oh yes, you're right. It is one of the islands off the coast of Madagascar.
I got it, man.
You nailed it first try. Yeah.
I got it. Yeah. Well, playing map games helps. That there are actually those little islands are represented. There's one off of kind of the Horn of Africa. That's usually historically a pirate haven.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at it now.
Don't even know who claims it as territory now. Actually,
Socotra. This looks like the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea who owns it though.
I'm gonna you keep playing her speech and I'll
Sure.
6
investigate.
of the world's 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa. By 2035, Africa, the youngest continent, will be the source of a global labor force with implied potential for growth and savings, thus impacting poverty reduction. By 2050, the richest 10% of Africans, that is 250 million people, will drive a nearly five-fold expansion in the demand for consumer goods and services. This is why broad-based, inclusive economic growth is vital. Fortunately, Africa's governments are developing the required infrastructure and institutions, even as political leaders are implementing reforms aimed at improving the business climate. And reforms are happening, with 5 of the 10 most improved countries in Africa, and most of all recorded reforms occurred in sub-Saharan Africa. And I would argue further that growth also ensures innovative reforms. There is no doubt that we prosper with growth. Inclusive growth has and will remain key to leaving no one behind and build a prosperous future for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Our third speaker.
Didn't see a lot of solutions in all of that talk. Just a lot of ideas that a rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah,
sort of
President
speech.
like Biden's speeches and
yeah,
not a lot of specifics there except Africa being a noun and what have you. So the island of Socotra is I think under Yemen.
Yemen, okay.
It's Yemen's territory.
Yeah, I see. It's right there.
Interestingly, Google does not recognize Somaliland because it shows Somalia as like the entire horn when it's meant to be split in half, with Somaliland being because it is a breakaway country that is only recognized by a few other countries. Actually,
Interesting.
It's kind of odd.
Somalia. Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, the island off the coast of Socotra is soon to be under Yemen, because the hotel, the questions are like, how do I get from Yemen to Sumatra, or what's the cost, or something like that.
Interesting.
It's got an island nature sanctuary. It looks like a park where there's a mountain on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many miles is that across? Well, regardless.
Not that many.
The world's full of places to have adventure. Like, go to South Georgia or Falklands.
Sure. Yeah, so anyway, this last lady, she's just talking about how the top 10% of Africa by the year 2050 is going to drive a 5-fold increase for products and stuff. And I didn't hear how that's going to be accomplished or what that's going to do to the world if that happens. But
where are the products going to come from?
Where are they coming from? How are they being manufactured? Are they going to be, well,
she didn't say what her country, what are the economic pillars? I wonder. Let's take a look at. Sorry, we don't have it up on our screens, obviously. But so you said it was off of Madagascar. Is it the Port Louis?
Let's see.
Or is it?
Let's bring it back up again. Yeah, it's basically due east of the middle of Madagascar.
Due east. Oh yeah.
Port Louis. Yeah, there you go.
So
that's probably the capital.
So she's called. It literally has like 3 towns on it.
It's not a big place.
And what are its economic pillars? I guess tourism, perhaps. I mean, but
yeah, good question.
I mean, Jesus Christ, this is just like the size. This is just the size of like a county, in America. So, yeah. You know what? This is where the pirate Utopia is in Uncharted 4.
Oh, really?
It's probably here. Well, I'm just joking, but like it's these islands that are out to sea from Madagascar. Sure. Game. It's you're in there actually isn't a port city on the east side of Madagascar, is there? Where is their port? I guess there really isn't a big port city in Madagascar. That's kind of odd. Well, I guess there's
kind of a
that
remote
one
country in general, isn't it? Right?
I guess it is. Their main city is like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
If you can call it a city, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Little diversion there. All right. Well, let's move on to the third
Anand
speaker.
Giridharadas is an editor-at-large at Time magazine, a political analyst at MSNBC, and the author of the best-selling book Winners Take All, The Elite Charade of Changing the World.
If you ask me what I think about capitalism, I would say maybe it's something we should try. Because free market capitalism, we're talking about tonight, is not what we actually have in its supposed epicenter, America, where I live, and about which I write in Winners Take All. A model America is exporting to the world. What we have come to know as capitalism isn't really capitalism. If capitalism is defined by a rugged...
No, it's what we call it because that's what we are calling what we have.
Right.
I mean, you can blame Marx, I guess, for doing that. So, I guess you can blame it on him.
Silly. We have free market.
But otherwise, yeah, then why are we using the word then if it's not what we have? Mm-hmm. What do you think we have?
Yeah, what do we have?
And he does say that. He does say what, he thinks we have is we corrupt corporate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sorry.
This guy is striking me as a right libertarian already. So...
He's not.
Chances in the marketplace, in the souk of information or ball bearings or coffee. What I see around me is something defined instead by slouching insecurity. The most lionized capitalists of our time are a group of mostly men, profoundly insecure men, terrified by the prospect of competing in a genuinely free and fair market.
That's how it's always been. You think Andrew Carnegie was comfortable with competing? That he didn't do everything in his power to build a monopoly over the entire system?
Or any capitalist,
or any of
type
those
industry.
guys of the the height
The heroes.
of
They were
unregulated
good
capitalism.
sports. They were all good sports. But the thing is, you don't know the names of the people who played by the rules and were good competitors.
Right.
You don't know who they are because they're
get
dead.
steamrolled.
They got steamrolled.
They don't last.
You know, who was the owner of Blockbuster? Even even a business that was successful
There
for
you go.
20 years. You know, top of the market. But who was running it? Do we know? We don't care.
We don't care. Yeah, we don't
They're
care. 'Cause
loser.
it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Uh-huh.
Actually,
bankers-
if you tell me, I can't name who runs Netflix. You know, so.
Well, that's true too.
Plunged the world economy into the abyss, weren't confident about their chances in the market, which is why they rigged regulations and tax codes to give them undue advantages and immunities. The oil companies that have given...
But they always do that. That's the problem with a bourgeois capitalist form of democracy, is because they will always rig the system in their own favor.
Yeah, there's always
how it
seems
works.
to be there's this ahistorical assumption or point of view that there was a time where the way things work now isn't how they worked then.
Yeah.
But it was always a illusion of nostalgia, or I love the way things were back then.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they? Why doesn't everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
Where were they? It's like, oh no, the good old days. Like, where were they?
Uh-huh.
Meaning everybody else, or people who don't agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
The time that the good old days were the good old days.
Right. Yeah. It's just.
given our planet a terminal diagnosis, aren't confident about their chances in the market without rigging policy and using bribery and violence and spreading fraudulent pseudoscience. Many of them would be extinct.
And would any of that just stop existing if we got rid of regulation of businesses?
He's not arguing against regulation. He isn't arguing against regulation, though.
Isn't he, though?
Well, the thing about him, and this again, he's an editor at large for Time.
Uh-huh.
Okay, he's a very mainstream kind of thinker, but magazines, being journalists, do acknowledge the problems. They just do not know how to actually solve any of them,
Mhm.
or they can't put forward a strategy or a platform, because they got to be neutral. But besides that, they don't have an actual analysis outside of these are problems and
Mhm.
someone's got to do something about it. People step up to solve them, then they're treated with a critical eye. What are you going to do and how are you going to do it? And are you working with the rules properly? Are you guys, and then suddenly populist movements are the enemies of peace and freedom.
Sure. Yeah.
And that means the left like us.
Right. Yeah. Always enemies of freedom and free speech and everything. We don't want any of that stuff for them.
We're the authoritarians.
That's right.
Because we're rational and things like that. There's maybe if we have time we can look at the latest Douglas Lane video as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'd be fun.
The monopolists and would-be monopolists of Silicon Valley aren't confident of their chances in the market. Otherwise, they wouldn't donate to politicians and spread a phony image of themselves as saviors to avoid regulation and being broken up. A capitalist self-image of swagger masks a capitalist reality of self-doubt. Self-doubt that then motivates our so-called capitalists to commandeer power to protect their mediocrity. What I see all around me is not capitalism in any meaningful sense of the word, but capture. Capture looks like 26 billionaires now owning as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity, 3.8 billion people. Capture looks like the global top 1% monopolizing.
Okay. But why? How is capture not capitalism?
Right. Yeah.
It's separate from, because again, capitalism in his mind, as in the normie's mind, is freedom, fair competition.
Yeah.
But that's a lie.
Wait.
As Jason said, that is a lie. It's a lie. It's very simple.
Yeah, he seems to be making the assumption that if we tried capitalism, it would just be a pure meritocracy, and all these great ideas would rise to the top and take over, and then it would just keep doing that again and again. Somehow there would be,
as he acknowledged, these are good ideas. We just have never done them.
Yeah.
So he's kind of a reverse, a sock puppet, not sock puppet socialist, but a no true socialist, where it's like, look, socialism's great. We just haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
All these states and policies, they weren't real socialism. Well, all of this isn't real capitalism to the liberal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a corrupted, captured form. And if we just had the right rules.
Right. I don't know what he thinks those right rules would be that would just turn on meritocracy and prevent any sort of unfair, undue advantage from ever happening.
They do have a platform. It's the platform of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I guess so.
Look no further.
82% of new income in a recent year. Capitalism looks like the few hoarding progress itself. And how does this capture persist? By dressing itself nowadays in the costume of enlightenment. Woke capitalism is everywhere around us. Billionaire philanthropy, impact investing, give one, get one product, social enterprises, basically everything Bono is involved with. But woke capitalism...
Oh no, that was supposed to be a laugh line.
I think I giggled the first time I watched this. I mean,
no
Bono
one
was
in
shown in the intro.
He's not wrong.
Well, because Bono is not a cultural icon for anyone under 40.
I think that's really it. Is you got a bunch
of
of 20-something college students.
Do you know how long it took me to understand what band Bono was in? I didn't even know what band he was the lead singer for. And even now, actually, if you asked me, I'd have to think hard about it because I keep forgetting. It was it's U2, right? Yeah, U2.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't until I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that I knew, Bono's U2, and U2's this band. Okay. But U2 is that an important rock band and part of rock history? It doesn't feel like it.
Okay.
I hear the Eagles more.
Yeah, that's actually true.
Is all too often a smokescreen for a manic hypercapitalism that is destroying opportunity and jeopardizing the earth. But capitalism or not capitalism, Milton Friedman or Karl Marx, is not the real debate. There's always going to be business, and there's always going to be government, and the question is the relationship. The debate is what kind of capitalism and what kind of counter pressures can keep business honest and keep it...
There's always going to be the church, and there's always going to be kings. And the proper debate is their relationship.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's always going to be slaves, and there's always going to be
masters.
Caesars.
Yeah.
The debate is about their relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely lack of imagination in this.
There's always going to be lice, and there's always going to be termites. And no, that's not the right. But let's see if we can get it to a nth degree.
Thank you.
There's always going to be nerds, and there's always going to be jocks.
All right.
And the real debate is their relationship.
To one another.
There we go.
To hear from all three speakers with me here on stage, very different perspectives. Perhaps I could quickly summarize the essence of what each position represents. In the case of Jason, very clearly, he says
He didn't give a idea of what that relationship would be. He just made the case that that's what, like,
That's
he
what we
only
should
made a
be
case of
talking
what
about.
the problem is. So he's a whole step behind what this debate's supposed to be.
Well, yeah.
Right? Where you debate is what's yay or nay, and then so he wasn't the right person to have on this stage. You needed someone with an actual position that's somewhere between growth is good, it's necessary, my country's a tax haven, and Jason, who's an eco-socialist.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, he's also framing socialism as just government. It's the Richard Wolff cliche. This socialism is government does stuff, because that's how he rephrased it after that. There's always going to be businesses and there's always going to be government, and we just have to talk about how they relate to one another. As
So
Karl Marx and
Jason is coming off as just a government booster.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have an answer for that, but I suppose that's what you were getting at, maybe, with like Jason isn't kind of maybe talking up democracy and workers' control enough. But again, this is a debate about growth.
Yeah, right. No, I just
not what kind of political ideology should carry us forward.
Sure. No, I mean, I totally agree with Jason's points and the things he said. I don't know. Maybe it is just trying to nicen things up for the average person, but if it's all just like doom and we have to have less, we have to do less, like as she's putting up, growth is killing us, stop growth. Then what does my life look like after that? What positive version of the future can I latch on to that includes that?
What Jason points out in the second half, where he says like this is a lie when he talks about most growth goes to the top 1%. Growth does not do anything for you. So in fact, your life without growth is either no different at all, but it's actually going to be better because what economic productivity does happen will actually go to you.
Well, good. I look
or to
forward
say
to
that,
that
or at least I think as far as this conversation is concerned, growth does not benefit you. So why have it? So you don't have to feel like you're affected at all. It's only going to mean that there won't be the hyper rich lording above you and buying up Twitter, or ruining things.
Well, to me, that's a much more palatable idea in the first place. Like,
because if it's about owning people, or having cultural power and culture war, just you could set it around the hyper rich are so entitled to be these cultural figures when they have no business being so. Don't you want to take them down a peg, or rather make it so that no one has such power unless they're actually talented?
Yeah.
So you can kind of make it a meritocratic argument, or you can make it about something, because if we're just talking about growth, not even how the economy works, but again, this is where the socialism comes in, where if you're going to have a non-growth economy, it's not really going to be capitalism anymore.
Right.
And that's something that the no growth kind of think tank and people grapple with.
Yeah.
And I think, as Jason started with, it's not about having a socialist economy, just a post-capitalist one. And it's also the line that the Greens went with, where we changed our platform to being, we seek a post-capitalist economy. We didn't name it. We just said it's not going to be capitalist. So the qualities that make something capitalist, which is reinvestment of profit, endless growth, sacrosanct private property, I guess.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, I look forward to his second half then.
There's a lot.
We need to stop growth. He believes the answer lies in a radical departure from capitalism, which he believes has failed to deliver on the promises. Amina, on the other hand, believes that growth is actually vital. We must embrace it. Yes, there are problems with capitalism, but it's the best option out there. And Anan, finally, somewhere in the middle, dare I say, growth isn't the problem. We need to redistribute the wealth. So Anan, not suggesting that we do away with capitalism, but not suggesting a tight embrace either. So let's now hear what you think about these three very different positions.
The social
It's time to vote. We need your input to find common ground among the speakers. We want to know exactly how much value you attach to the arguments you've heard. You have a total of 100 points to divide. You can divide them over 1, 2, or all 3 statements. To do so, simply assign points to the statements on a sliding scale.
All right, so as everyone is on to their phone, voting away, now let's go to you quickly and give us a sense of what the reactions out there online look like.
They are very opinionated online. I think you'll find. I'm sure these guys are.
They're opinionated. That's the nicest, cleanest way I could put it.
I mean, you could just describe most of online that way.
Well, that's why I was kind of saying it was the other parts of this are really generic. And when you get down to it, it's like, I'm in the trenches, Diane. I'm out here and things are happening. It's the same thing of saying, like, they're opinionated online.
Yeah, she must not look at internet comments very often, which is probably a healthy habit too.
It's just the way she's presenting it, obviously.
They've got their heads down voting right now, but thank you for getting in touch. As always, just make sure you hashtag Dear World so I can easily find your comments and suggestions. Just two to read out right now. We've got someone from South Africa watching. It's Rhoda, and Rhoda says, Doha debates a lot. It's never enough, as in growth is never enough. The forever rising cost of living, the lack of education on how to manage it, the social pressures that we subscribe to also contribute to depression and over-indebtedness. We need more financial education, she says. And I'd very quickly like to shout out to the 8th graders who have missed the field trip and stayed behind to watch the Doha debates. Right now they're watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. 8th graders. Wow, I just want to know what you guys think about this debate. Make sure that you guys comment as much as you can. And just very quickly, there seems to be a consensus forming online about the fact that capitalism is in a moment of change, that things are changing. One thing they're not sure about is exactly which one of our solutions is the best way forward. Rida.
Definitely a lot of fluctuation, a lot of movement around this issue. And we're seeing it on the streets with the protests that we're witnessing in so many different places in this region, certainly as well. Now, I'm told that the votes are now in. So let's go to them and see what we've got. I think we've got them on the screen.
They will be dealt with.
Here we go. So, well, I can see that there's a clear favorite, and that was the 3rd position. That was Anand's position. Growth.
Oh, he's the 3rd positionist, is he? No, I kid.
Boo.
Yeah, no, that's actually heartening to see that at least the SOC Dem is getting more than the traditional capitalist. So,
well, like any actual debate, and that's why I'll call this a debate, not an argument. Is A, it's a formal process.
Right.
B, the audience is pulled before and after.
Yeah, that's one thing I really...
Which is something you don't see in Twitch.
That's true. That's true. It's one of the mechanics I hated about there's this series called Intelligence Squared on NPR, and they would would vote ahead of time, and then they would vote at the end, and whoever had changed the most minds was the winner of the debate. But it was just the dumbest
New
thing.
Atheists always won.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, you said I thought it was dumb. I mean, yeah, it's dumb in retrospect, but I enjoyed that it actually had a definite answer or winner.
Yeah.
Or,
but I mean,
it showed that the audience like had an undecided, and then they would be split, or they would lean one way or the other. But it's usually towards the New Atheists, which are the ones I was watching.
Sure. It's just the fact that the one who changed those minds won, which would make it really easy to just like, oh, I'm not really sure. I'm on the fence. I don't really know. And oh, look at that. Richard Dawkins changed my mind. So another point towards him.
Well, again, yes, it's a double-edged sword, because if someone lies really well, they can win every debate. And it must be the right. Which is,
I'm just saying the audience can lie about their own positions going in, and then stack the deck for their favored candidate.
So you can't trust anybody. It's all let's all be What's it called when you don't believe in anything?
Oh yeah, I guess
Not stoic, obviously.
I guess just nihilist.
No, the sophist.
Oh, okay.
Sophist.
Oh yeah. Sure. Just delight in picking apart people's ideas and making them look dumb. Yeah. And thank you.
Well, sophists are kind of like nothing matters because you can't know anything.
Right.
Really.
There you go.
But I don't think that way.
No, I don't either. Thanks for the follow too, Glazy. Hope you're enjoying the.
At least maybe on TV you can't believe anything.
True.
Because it's all in the presentation.
True.
But what is that? Yeah, let's just keep moving.
Okay.
Growth isn't the problem.
If it was legal, I would buy you all a drink.
All right. A different kind of drink, maybe. But anyway, growth isn't the problem. Redistribute the wealth. So that's something that's obviously resonated a lot with the audience here and with people voting online as well, with 54% of the vote, Anand. Whereas the other two perspectives gathered way fewer votes. And we'll see whether that can actually shift when we begin to delve deeper into your arguments. Let's see how much you can actually sway the audience one way or the other. And that is what happens when we get into our next phase of the debate.
Welcome to the Mejlis, a traditional Arab consensus building practice. The focus of the Mejlis is to welcome critical conversations and reach solutions. Hito will encourage our speakers to bridge differences and find common ground.
So let's see if we can find common ground on such a hot topic as this one. Amina, you ran a country, an entire country, an island nation, Mauritius, of about 1.2 million people. If you'd known Jason before today...
There's 1 million people on that little island? I swear, when I was looking, there's 1 million. It does not look like 1 million people live there. It's like the size of the towns. They look the size of they're 10,000 each tops. I find it hard to believe there's 1 million on there, but wow.
I think it's maybe a 25 mile by maybe 40 mile that's the
tops.
Entirety of the island.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
the circumference of it.
Yeah. But that's
like saying Martha's Vineyard has 1 million people on it.
I know, right? It's like a lot of it's forested too, it appears. At least from the overhead.
I find that hard to believe then.
It looks like it's all basically concentrated in the coasts and then up along the central corridor.
I guess it could be,
but geez, that's got to be a really dense city then, or series of cities, huh?
It's all slums.
Yeah, well, very well might be. Port Louis. Yeah, Port Louis looks like
they must have had a shitload of immigration.
That's gotta be.
But for what?
But like the skyline of this major city, like what looks like to be the major city, is like St. Paul, Minnesota. Like there's a few. You could call them maybe high rises, not even really skyscrapers, but.
Well, I suppose the Tri-City area I live in is 1 million people.
Yeah.
But we're like a Tri-City area that covers 3 to 4 counties.
Yeah,
and this is the size of one county tops.
Uh-huh.
And our county is almost completely developed, and it's, anyway.
Yeah, interesting anyway to learn that.
Yeah.
Very dense.
Advisor.
Cities, I suppose.
Or would you have fired him the next day?
Jason's view, they are relevant to some extent. But when you're running a country, and the way my country has been run since independence, I would go with what Anand has said, because this is exactly what we have practiced. When Mauritius got independent in 1968, the per capita income was $200, and 51 years later, we're just under 10,000. How did we manage to do this has been through a series of very strong decisions that have been taken, but more importantly, we have learned upfront to distribute the wealth, right? We have given free education, we have given free healthcare, we have invested in the social welfare as well, and started with...
Well, when you're an island, small island country, where else can the money go?
That's true.
The mainland? Yeah. I mean, what else will you do with it? But where's the money coming from, right? How are they tied into the global economy? But this is what's explored later when the other two push back on her, or at least Jason does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder how a country like that could even be somewhat like what would happen if the global trade and energy system broke down? Like they would be.
But we don't want to focus just on this president here.
Sure.
Decision like family planning up front. And right now, as I speak, about nearly 30% of our GDP is invested into these major pillars. And so I totally agree with you when you said that there is to redistribute the wealth, but we are now at a crossroad of how to increase growth precisely so that the youth do not get left behind, in as much as we need now to create new pillars through growth to actually absorb unemployment.
So I gather it's fair to say that you wouldn't have let Jason run the Treasury Department under your administration. But Jason, let's presume, for argument's sake, that you did get the job and that you in fact lasted in the job for a few days. What would you have done differently? How compelling a case could you make against the statistics that Amina presented in the case of Africa? Capitalism has, on the whole, been good.
I'm very glad you asked, because actually I would probably agree with Amina on this, because my argument here is not that poor countries should abandon growth, but rather the rich countries should, right? And this is actually a question I would put directly to Anand as well. So yes, we need to reform capitalism in America, but do you think that the US, with its existing extremely high levels of resource and energy use, should continue growing resource and energy use? That becomes a key question we have to address. And so as far as poor countries go, they should absolutely pursue growth to generate the resources necessary to invest heavily in healthcare and education, right? But growth should not be the objective in and of itself in perpetuity.
But how can you do that if you're suggesting that we stop growth? I mean, how can you grow the economy? How could you grow the health sector?
I'm not suggesting that poor countries should stop growing.
So on.
I think poor countries should continue growing. Right. Of course, the objective should not be growth itself, but should be to grow certain sectors of the economy that need to grow for social benefit, right? But for rich countries, this is my question here, right? Rich countries have extraordinarily high, deeply ecologically catastrophic levels of resource consumption, okay? And these are the countries that need to scale down their impact on our planet to create space for other humans to thrive, because that's not happening right now, and it needs to.
Anand, do you think that Jason lives in a utopian world, in a fantasy world? Can we stop economic growth if we even wanted it?
I think when we have an all-or-nothing conversation about capitalism, we are playing into the hands of extreme capitalists. This is
But he's not, though. He was saying the opposite. He was saying that it has to be situational, and these countries now that are consuming most of the world's stuff have to stop growing.
Which is really it really kudos to Jason or anyone who's in these situations you don't blow your top when faced with someone who literally did not listen to a fucking word you said. Right? And this is kind of what I feel like with my union prez. I can say something and she literally reacts like I didn't say it.
Oh, that's
or ignore or just says, no, that's not gonna work. Yeah, I don't have a big speech or any big comment here, but just that, yeah.
Sure.
But you were saying that, yeah, Jason's being situational and nuanced, and then he's not really just reacting to Jason. He's talking to everybody.
True.
Don't be dogmatic is really what he wants to say, but he doesn't put it that way. He just says, don't be all or nothing, as if there's a no capitalist side, which we count as, but we are an extreme marginal minority. But yes, it is maddening to think, like, how does being anti-capitalist play into the hands of capitalists? Well, I suppose if you're just selling T-shirts at Hot Topic that are anti-capitalist, yes, you're playing into capitalism's hands. Or you're anti-capitalist as an aesthetic or subculture, as the left is sometimes, I want to say, it is a subculture, not a movement or a political force or identity. It's actually a aesthetic identity at times. Because if you're not living in it, if you're not organizing for it, then what is it?
That's true.
Exactly.
Rhetoric that comes from Wall Street. You either leave us alone to practice manic hypercapitalism, in which every 10 or so years we will tank the world economy. Sorry. Either you leave us alone to do that, to run that kind of casino economics, or you get your light rail, and your government programs are going to lead you directly to the gulags. That's what they want you to believe, right? That's how it starts. One day you make a little light rail system, little public investment, you get into the light rail, and you're just in the death camps, right?
What?
It's all or nothing. And the reality is...
No, he's talking about moderates and right-wingers. Like, that's how they think. Light rail goes to the gulags.
Yeah.
No Agenda 21, and this is a Time editor, remember? He is really plugged into the American zeitgeist when it comes to the national discussion in America. And the national discussion is any sustainability is totalitarian socialism, green capitalism even. Any Green New Deal that's what he's referring to Green New Deal. Yeah. Yes, it's Green New Deal is the gulags. The 20-minute city is literally a plot to put us in pods and make us eat bugs.
And make it so we can't leave can't go more than 20 minutes.
By the way, I want to point something out. I found it hilarious that when Tucker Carlson did his expose on eating bugs, and he had a chef who made bugs, he tried them and he liked them.
Did he really?
Yes. He was like, you know what? That's not actually too bad. It's almost like by the end of the segment, 10 minutes
doesn't matter what he says at that
he's
point,
like, this isn't really an issue. I don't know if this is a big deal. He was almost kind of making fun of the idea of like they're gonna make you eat the bugs while he has on a chef who's just presenting the option of bugs in high class cuisine, because he basically makes a grasshopper burger, and it makes it. I think the chef makes it clear, like it's not all bugs; it's bugs that are in with other ingredients. And I think that's something Tucker actually kind of asks a clarifying question. So this isn't really all bugs; it's just bugs in a burger. And so it's like, well, that doesn't sound so bad.
Oh man. It's like it doesn't matter what he says after a certain point.
I think it was Tabernacle that was covering it, or maybe it was RT Aaron Brown.
Oh, that could be too.
Arun Brown.
Yeah, what's he gonna do now that there's no more Tuck Check until he gets his program up on Twitter?
He's got Chuck Tech. He's got Chuck Tech. He does a weekly Jordan Peterson.
That's true. That's true.
No, he covers all the weirdos at once now, for the most part. Okay. He just goes to all the weirdos.
Perverts.
Perverts. Yeah, right. Yeah. Left nut.
Left nut. Yeah. It's good stuff.
This work. I have been to many different places in the world that practice all levels of capitalism, right? That practice variations. You have kind of state-managed authoritarian capitalism in a place like this, or China. You have anarchic, democratic, universal suffrage before affluence capitalism in India. You get a different set of outcomes. You have in Europe, Northern and Southern Europe, very different models, and everybody gets different outcomes. So instead of this, we've gotten to a weird place in the world where we have a greater understanding of gender fluidity today than of capitalism fluidity. There is a whole set of choices we could make about the kind of capitalism we should have. And that's the conversation we should be having. Capitalism is like religion. It's like any other social force. It needs to live nestled among other forces that have a healthy counter-pressure. And right now, it is eating all the other counter-forces.
But you just said it. It's a system of winner takes all. It's a system of losers and winners. It breeds profit-seeking and greed. Aren't we all greedy animals? I mean, can you suggest that we can have it both ways? Can you just apply a few band-aids to it and say, oh, hold on, we'll just make a new, better version of capitalism? It's still called capitalism, isn't it?
This is a fantasy that has arisen again from the people who want to practice extreme capitalism, the idea that human beings are naturally greedy. I have actually met a lot of human beings in my life, and they're not one thing. Okay? They're greedy. Yep, totally. They're introverted, they're extroverted, they're cooperative, they help other people. I have 2 children. I see these various human tendencies every day before 9 a.m. So we have the whole point of having societies, of having rules, of having laws, of having institutions, is you encourage people to do a little more of this kind of behavior and a little more of that. Greed, channeled in the right way, can make people start interesting businesses.
But don't you need a radical departure?
World economy.
Don't you need a radical approach? I mean, Jason is offering you a solution. Why not take it?
I have lived in countries where there was too little growth. I don't know where he's going to set the Jason line, and any country above that has to go down to the Jason line, and any country below that has to go up. You know, I think it depends on what kind of growth.
It's not the Jason line; it's the ecological sustainability line.
Yeah, so that
I think the thing that he's still talking in terms of maybe, as we are, political viability or quality of life. But we need, the point of a climate movement is to continuously point out that this is our fucking survival at stake.
Absolutely.
This isn't just about whether we have 2 TVs, 1 microwave, 2 microwaves, or a smartphone every year. This is about whether we have a fucking society at all.
Yeah.
Because we won't have one in a century.
Right,
not a word, not remotely close. We'll be back to feudalism. Or something of that nature.
Yeah, something like that, especially if resources start getting really scarce.
And so saying like, I've been in a country without growth. I'm like, well, at least it was a country. But obviously we don't. That is an all or nothing approach. A low growth or socialist economy is not an economy that is less than.
Right.
It's more than.
Right.
It's more than. So, and this is Hallie Hawkins, like in the Greens, I did a show, a 3 Left episode on this as well. Like, I think it was called "What's Going On with the Greens," or "What are the Greens up to these days?" And it was a panel discussion between those in the Green Party who are like on, Jason Hinkle's rhetoric, I think, focusing on growth or no growth, and Howie kind of being a little disgusted and like, this is not going to fly in the public. Like this, we cannot talk like this. We should all be about, job growth and growing the economy, or not just growing the economy, but just like we need to focus on a strong economy, and talking about scaling it back in some ways is probably how you get the kind of reactionary tendencies of the Center for Political Innovation, who will continuously, like a fascist, say that we are a Malthusian population.
Yeah.
People want to cut population,
right?
But at the same time, we are also our problem is that we want to provide everything to people or something. I literally, it was being pointed out when someone was covering their last conference that they were literally contradicting themselves at the same time. Oh no, it was that the great genius of Maupin was that he can like his killer argument against capitalism is that it relies on infinite growth. Let me repeat that. So the Maupin heads complained that the problem of all the socialists is that they're Malthusian because they are anti-growth.
Oh, okay.
And the problem with capitalism,
putting that together,
is that it's based on infinite growth.
So we have to have non-infinite growth that also does not cap growth. Gotcha.
You got it. And someone needs to someone needs to ask Peter Coffin what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, right. You gotta have one more.
He made another long documentary just about Malthusian socialists or something, or Malthusianism. He's done it 3 times now, but he doesn't link other leftists, and he probably does now. It's so weird.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when Maupin always talks about how his version of socialism is basically just providing tons and tons of consumer goods and stuff, and just abundance for everybody and all this stuff. And Yeah, it makes zero sense. Oh, it looks like Dan is frozen. Well, I'm going to say welcome in to James. Good to see you. It looks like the
Am I good now?
Okay. Yeah, I hear you again. You froze for a second there.
Okay, good. I know, it was just a connection blip.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, well, I guess any socialist should talk about how our, socialist economy will be more abundant for you, or rather, as Jason put it, we already have an abundance economy. It is just, and so he's also, the Time editor, what he talks about fits into Jason's solution. That we have an abundance economy. It's about distributing, not just distributing, but of course, sharing what we have.
Sharing,
so
and having
I think
a say over how things are distributed. Yeah.
It's bad faith, and maybe it's part of the framing that Jason is forced to take an anti-growth position because that's what he's doing. In that there's these assumptions based on that if he's anti-growth, it must mean he's for the less economy. But he clarifies most growth doesn't go to the masses. It goes to the top. And it's the top that you want to redistribute anyway. So really, just as a socialist will argue, we just want to ensure that when wealth is made, it's being distributed, so it doesn't need to be redistributed.
Right.
Why does it need to be redistributed? Why is it distributed this way naturally? Because obviously, if you're going to talk about capture, corruption, corporate communism, you're talking about the way things are distributed from the get-go. And that's wrong. So we'll talk about that. And then if we're going to talk about that, then we will, hopefully, of course, we'll always be surprised by how liberals if we're going to talk about how it's distributed, then we need to talk about how many small business owners there are, or how the diversity of business owners need to change, because they'll make it about identity. It's not about what, it's actually about white and black. It's that the whites have all the wealth and blacks are poor, not just that it's just class based. So if we have more black billionaires, then that evens things out. or black wealth.
Right.
But black wealth is always subservient to white wealth. But whatever. It's not just racial.
Right.
But we will make it about ownership.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on.
Vegetables in America instead of beef, that would be a very different future. If we had, all clean cars instead of gasoline cars, that's a very different future. I actually don't accept the proposition that the only kind of growth we can have is the kind of growth that we can
right.
on the planet.
Right, Anand clearly doesn't buy your approach. How do you send it to him?
I think there's some confused points in Anand's argument here, right? The first is that it's true there are lots of different types of capitalism, but all of those different types of capitalism have one thing in common, and that is that they require perpetual growth, okay? And this is really the issue we have to deal with now. I want to point you to not the Jason line, but rather the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, okay? Now, in their scenarios for how we can achieve radical emissions reductions consistent with a carbon budget for 1.5 or 2 degrees, they point out that rich nations have to dramatically reduce resource throughput, okay, in order to reduce energy use so that we can achieve a rapid transition to renewables. So this includes the USA. So the question is, do you think that the USA, in your reformed version of capitalism, should keep growing resource use or not?
It could grow resource use if it was using renewables, right? It doesn't, it depends on what...
Science says it can't.
Yeah.
Science says it can't, actually. The data, the numbers, the hard evidence says it can't, actually. It can't.
Yeah. That's the unfortunate truth. Not just going to replace the number one fuel source.
It's just confusion, not that he's bad faith wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's particularly well informed on any of the things he said. So yeah, I'd say that's more likely it.
James is saying he would buy a solar truck or an electric truck, he means, I guess, if he could afford it.
Yeah, there you go.
But, yeah.
So Glazy asking why.
But again, what are you going to charge it with? You know, there's a video we could probably cover about how charging stations are bullshit or they're a failure, and I think that needs to be because we in my office there's some discussions about the charging stations, the school districts that are looking or planning long-term planning on building the facilities to charge the buses if they're going to have electric buses. And it's a big can of worms, not only because of the costs involved, but can it work?
Yeah.
Not just economically, I think, but is it worth doing that?
Sure. And, it still takes energy to manufacture and mine the minerals needed for the
new
batteries and the new vehicles and all this stuff. It's not as though we're just getting free energy at some point. It always takes energy to make energy. And it happens to be that the energy returned on the energy invested is the best ratio on non-renewables. It just happens to be the case. A lot of stored up energy. But so just flipping everything over to renewables, you still have a huge energy.
Oh yeah,
deficit.
and the fact that I guess this is just like early 20th century with cars. Is that you have what James is pointing out is that you have charging stations that are specific to models of electric car. They're not standardized. So there are charging stations built that only work with one type.
Well, that too, the old forced scarcity model of capitalism. Yeah, that's why, Elon Musk is putting up charging stations all over the place, is because they only work with his vehicle, and then he can just kind of be like, well,
Trying to do vertical integration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to answer your question, Glazy, I have 10-minute follower only chat on because trolls generally get bored by 10 minutes, so they leave. So hoping that's not the reason that you've stuck around, to prove that that's not the case and that they do have a longer attention span. But anyway, that's the reason why.
The douchebag buffer.
That's right.
This is what I'm saying. All growth is not equal.
Well, see, but
right?
the problem with this
and I will say this is very important. I was a reporter in India for the New York Times for many years, and I saw what growth means to people. As Amina pointed out, I saw what it does, and I know you're not saying developing countries need to stop, but I think we are using the idea that we are growing in a bad way to attack the notion of growing at all.
Well, we are.
I was in the Netherlands last
We are
week,
growing in a bad way.
and they are growing.
Because the growth only goes to the top.
With
Right.
vegan restaurants everywhere and clean cars everywhere. I think it makes no sense to say that both of them are equally on a bad path.
Let me ask someone who was in a position to actually affect change. You just heard it. Is it going to be...
Again, he's not saying that equally. He's not making, he's not saying any of these two situations are equivalent. That's just, he keeps making these dumb straw mans.
And it's also ignoring, again, because he's working as a magazine writer, the ignoring where the resource use is. It's not in restaurants or
that too, yeah.
or even cars.
Mhm.
I mean, there's this constant
Very small
confusion
fraction.
that transportation or the energy used by cars, as much as it is still a minor fraction of energy use in America.
Yeah.
It's a it is like 15%.
Yeah.
Half of energy use is in buildings.
Right.
And then another 20% is the electricity.
Sure.
And then the rest is transportation.
Right.
And so there's a constant confusion of where the energy use for. It's for building, powering / heating / lighting buildings, and all of if all of the, and this is like the big lie, if all of the cars were electric tomorrow, it would only cut our carbon emissions, I don't know, by 1% or something. It wouldn't do a lot because because a lot of the use would be, a lot of the electricity is coming from non-renewable sources. But even if they were all renewable, it's not a big impact.
Right.
It's
It would probably help local air quality for especially some of the major cities. But beyond that, yeah, it's not really doing too much to move that needle on overall energy consumption.
Yeah,
Especially, I mean,
and it's not residential use. It's also not so much residential use.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of the it's commercial, it's industrial. So
Yeah.
to James' comment, you know, he's making a joke about being afraid of the dark, but that seems to be the case in certain large office buildings. They keep the lights on as an advertisement for the building, so you can see it at night.
Right. Yeah, and they heat all kinds of space that's used 8 hours of the day, and then empty the rest of the time.
Because maybe if it's a glass box, it doesn't have the ability to have what is it called? The type of lighting where you're just lighting up the outside.
Oh yeah,
So
dark sky style.
So you can see the building. It's accent lighting. It makes it's very nice. It's beautiful. That's a lot less energy than keeping all the lights on. But but it is a way of using because you can have like in Albany, there's a pretty busy intersection, but very few of the buildings have any exterior accent lights. So it still feels like a very dark, intersection with only the street lights or something. And some globe sidewalk lights, but the globes are just the worst street lighting you can have because most of the light is going up.
Yeah, right.
Or they're just so not putting out a lot of lumens, so
Sure. Well, it's glare too. If you adjust your eye to the light, you can't see anything around it, and it just doesn't illuminate. It's not great lighting. You're right.
It was chosen by planners who are driving to work.
There you go.
And not people who actually walk down our main street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a student project has calculated that.
Reduction. What would you choose? What would be your priority?
You know, Anand has just made the point that about growth and renewables. Increasingly, especially if you look at the renewable energy, it has been shown that growth is possible by adopting alternative ways of generating energy. Very often we are stuck with the idea that capitalism means using fossil fuel, using all these exploitative extractive techniques and all the rest of it. But increasingly now, many
renewable energy uses no exploitative extraction techniques.
Right. Famously,
that's true.
No materials are mined in the process of making renewable energy stuff.
I mean, hell, even just the setting up of wind turbines. I was just seeing a video report. Was it Real News Network? Or was it Unicorn Riot? They were interviewing, or I guess it was a Real Report they were doing, in an area of Mexico where foreign companies are setting up wind turbine farms. They leak oil, when they break down, and they're like anywhere else, like someone doesn't want a wind turbine in their backyard, they shoot them. They're destroying the village, and they say, "Oh, this is going to bring economic, benefits to your town. You're going to have jobs. It's going to bring wealth." Well, they're not seeing any of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you might have a little bit of labor need to set up the turbines, but then once they're up and running, it's just
because the bigger turbines, especially, are big industrial pieces of machinery. A lot of steel.
Yeah. A lot of concrete. Yeah.
A lot of concrete. And they use oil lubricant. They're not fossil fuel free. And they need to be lubed often. Or if not, then they don't work.
Yeah, sure.
Stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Also showing that growth is possible by using renewables. Now, you have made a very good point about growth impacting people's life. And I think I've just given a case example of Mauritius having used growth. Now, how do we ensure that growth is possible? You mentioned the United States growing using infinite growth. Very often within the economic system, at least we've experienced it in Mauritius, when growth is happening in the north, it tends to pull people up from the south. Now, having something very important in terms of human greed, I mean, this is again, I think, which is the bottom line of the problems arising with capitalism. And this is again, when we came to 2008, the crisis of 2008 has also shown that we need increasingly regulators, we need government to be there, because they should be the arbiter of all the issues that we take on board.
But let's face it, that's not going to happen in today's practical world. Can you take on the big tech companies and the governments and the big interests who actually benefit from this system, as you call them, the Davos billionaires, the do-gooder entrepreneurs? Are they going to rein in a system that they have benefited from?
We don't need them to rein it in. We need to rein them in. And here's how we do it.
That's what I was going to say.
The winners of this age of extreme capitalism won because they did two things. Phase one, phase two. Phase one was basically trickle-down economics, right? Phase one was attack government. Government is bad, denigrate it. Full-on cultural war against the idea of government that spread everywhere. People on the right believed it hard. People on the left believed it gently, like secondhand smoke. Then you say, taxes should be cut, regulations should be cut, lionize entrepreneurs, the only good people. That's phase one. Phase one works for a little bit of time. It fools people for maybe you get a good decade out of phase one, right? Then a few things happen. Social problems start to multiply because you don't have a cop on the beat, and rich people get a lot richer, and people start to get angry. So then you got to do phase two, otherwise you're going to get overthrown. Phase two is the people who are the winners from this situation arrive back on the stage and they say, you know what a shame, what a pity. All these social problems, government can't fix it. Well, here I am with my money. I'll work with Bono, we will work something out. And this is like putting arsonists in charge of the firefighting brigade. So there is a solution,
but you call them
it's called
hypocrites,
democracy, and we don't need their consent.
Sure.
We need to actually build people power to rein in plutocrats.
But you've called these people hypocrites.
Yes.
Yet the system that is in place, that you advocate keeping, actually will make sure that people achieve those same profits that will maybe in the future make them the next plutocrats.
Trickle-down
quickly,
effect.
but I want to get to Jason as well.
Yeah, trickle-down effect doesn't work. I mean, I don't think that it happens naturally, and this is why
You just said trickle-down works. You said when the North grows, it lifts, it pulls the South.
Yeah.
That's trickle-down rhetoric.
Right. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very confused.
I'm not following.
No, me either.
I'm usually annoyed as well when people doing an analysis, as he just did, they just kind of start in 1970.
Yeah.
That's when things started. That's when things shifted, I guess. They shifted, of course. But that's not when, things started. That's not how things always work. It's just an extension of it.
Mm-hmm.
The shifting to the information economy, information tech, as Graeber was talking about.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't really start there because everything that happened in the 70s was a result of the 15 years beforehand. I mean, rather the cultural blitz that the free market works and capitalist propaganda, so to speak. Phase one. He's simplifying it, obviously, and that's I guess it's not something to say I hate it, because otherwise, where do you start? You just pick a starting point. So I guess I'm not really complaining about that, but it takes an hour to really explain how this has always been capitalism. I mean, it's not like the phase one and phase two you have explained was also how it worked before.
Absolutely.
As soon as we had public education, we had capitalist propaganda in there.
Uh-huh.
We had the whole we're going to teach you about how Edison is a hero.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or rather, before public education was doing that, it was the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as soon as
who owned the newspapers? It was the richest man in town.
There you go. And then also as soon as you have these large robber barons consolidating all of their power, they too turned around and became great philanthropists. There's they're still to this day.
Yes.
The
Yeah, it's
Carnegie
weird. It's weird.
Corporation.
He weirds. Yeah. So I guess the mistake I want to point out is that he's laying this out like this is like the
new,
the post modern version of capitalism, but it was also the modern version of capitalism too.
Yeah.
And the pre-modern version of capitalism to an extent.
Yeah.
Which is what Marx
like
was describing in his life.
Yeah. And Dan asks, what pollution and environmental damage does solar or water power have? Well, solar is far less than some of the others because it has less moving parts, tends to last longer. You still have to mine some minerals for it, especially some rare earth minerals.
And if it's silicon, we're talking about sand, but you have to melt that sand.
Yeah. It takes energy to make
parts. The storage is obviously high mineral content if it's done with something different, but of course we shouldn't just bank on potential technologies.
Sure.
The point of production is less pollution.
Yeah.
And yes, we want to switch to renewables. It's not an argument against renewables. It's an argument against capitalist produced renewables.
Yeah. Well, and just
to say
endless expansion of
it is
energy
renewables within the context of capitalism.
Right.
Which is still polluting and industrial and But of course, it's almost like we go down a primitivist line to say like it's industrial capitalism, and if it's not going to be capitalist, then it's also not going to be industrialist.
Yeah, that's certainly not realistic. At least
you can kind of look at how China is going to start digging its way out of its pollution hole from the last 20 years.
Sure. And then water power, its main environmental hazard is just the ecological damage it does upstream from wherever you put a dam in. And eventually it ends up silting itself to the point where all the silt builds up behind the dam, and it's eventually
it's not air pollution. It depends on what you consider pollution. Right? There's air pollution, and that's always usually the thing that's being mentioned, carbon pollution. But you just don't want to talk about decarbonizing. That's a mistake too. But there's social pollution or social problems. There's the pollution of ruining water supplies, or whatnot.
Plenty.
But dams are usually at best for controlling water flow. But that's where you build a lot of smaller dams, and they can each be generating a few megawatts each.
Yeah,
and it'll add up to a gigawatt.
True enough.
Founding fathers of the capitalist system, the Galbraith and all these people, they had put down the systems, and we have deregulated, we have removed all the checks and balances.
Yeah, they didn't have they had barriers before. When they were set up, they had barriers. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid to talk this way.
Yeah.
Like the interwar years were such a bastion of rules and regulations. or I guess the post-war boom.
Right.
Like, no, there weren't regulations. It was in the 70s there were regulations, environmental, social, that were put in place. It wasn't really with the New Deal era. You had regulations for labor practices, but if we're talking environment, that's not till the 70s.
Yeah, it didn't come around till Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, all that sort of thing. Really,
the shift where where government was supposedly bad.
That's silly. But
movements.
And then also they've just been steadily dismantling all those regulations from the 70s since the 80s. So
So I mean the 60s social movements are both the cause and the solution to all our problems.
Yeah, there you go.
Effect will not happen in economics, and we need to have government regulators in place precisely to rein in on all these big entrepreneurs who are making it. And yet, what we're saying is increase salary, the discrepancies between the have and the have-nots.
So, Jason, my turn to ask you if Amina now lives in a fantasy world.
Because Musk and Bezos, they're still entrepreneurs, right? They're just big entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's funny. That's funny.
There needs to be a better word for that. What is it when you're an entrepreneur but you just buy all of the ideas and companies that you get credit for? Some I feel like there's something that, well, I mean,
and you know how
that's true.
And and it's fine with me because they get upset when you call them a capitalist. Jay-Z basically called it a made-up word It's like they're making up words, calling us capitalists. They got to make up. They got to come up with some better attacks, man. They can't tear me down.
Yeah, yeah. As if you help out enough other people.
Am I freezing again?
Yeah. No, not on my end. Are you freezing on your end?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I'm still seeing you clear. All right. Well, we'll continue on.
Capitalism. I mean, they both argued that, in fact, all growths are not equal. What's wrong with green growth?
Okay, so yes, here's the thing: is that it's actually impossible to disagree. I mean, nobody would disagree with what Anna is saying. I mean, I fully agree with it. I sense that all of you do as well, right? We obviously need to regulate capitalism more effectively, more democratically, and make it fundamentally fairer, okay? What I'm trying to do is push both of them to address another additional point, which is the question of ecological breakdown, right? And now this is a crucial scientific question in the sense of we are presently in an era of extreme ecological overshoots. Okay, we're drawing more from the planet than we're replacing, and the planet is degrading rapidly as a result. And we see this not just in the form of climate change, but also in mass species extinction, ocean acidification, soil depletion, et cetera, et cetera. Now, even if we were somehow magically, and of course we have to have renewable energy, even if we powered the existing economy, growth-based global economy, with renewable energy, it would still be driving those consequences, okay? Because we're still extracting more than the Earth can bear, okay? So, and here's the thing: if we look at alternative, methods of capitalism, like take Scandinavia, probably Anand likes Scandinavia quite a lot, right? They seem quite sustainable, but they consume, on a per capita basis, about 30 plus material tons of stuff per person per year, which is 4 times over the sustainable boundary. If everyone in the world consumed at the same level of material stuff that people in Scandinavia do, we would need 4 planets to make that feasible, okay? So the argument I want to make here is that we can flourish in an economy that requires less resource throughput and less energy. We know that's possible. We have robust economic models showing we can do it. There's a scientific consensus around it. Recently, there was an open letter signed by 350 scientists across Europe calling on the European Union to adopt post-growth principles. So this is not an academic question. It's really one that we have to be posing politically.
All right.
What do you think of that?
I think it's a perfect place now to actually head over to our connector, Govinda Clayton, to see whether there is any way of
Zach,
reaching consensus.
what's up?
I mean,
Am I
can you see
connected
any
properly?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
Okay.
Jason, of ever working together, or are there differences way too fundamental? And where does the conversation leave Anand in all this?
I mean, absolutely not. These guys are never going to get along. That's quite clear. No, I mean, being serious now, in conflict resolution practice, we talk about moving from positions to interests. So moving about what we think we want to the interests that underlie those. And what we saw in the presentations today and at points in the discussion is people really clinging onto their positions, in particular like whether growth in and of itself is good or bad. But actually, if we look at these underlying interests, and I think some of the points Jason just made and that Nan previously made, there's lots of commonality between our different speakers. All of the speakers are talking about the need to address economic inequalities, both within and across countries. All of our speakers are talking about the environmental catastrophe that must be addressed in some way. So if we can kind of shift the debate from a discussion about is growth good or bad, and instead explore what are the different solutions that we could possibly have, I think we're going to find more consensus across the speakers.
All right,
But that's what Jason's been doing this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's made it about the environmental and inequality and like how to address it.
Yeah. None of the other two have really touched what to do with the environment. And anything.
Not in a serious way, yeah.
Resource consumption.
Jason's been mentioning the scientific consensus.
Right, yeah. He's the only one, yeah.
He hasn't actually been making it about growth. Or rather, anti-growth position is the conclusion of the interests.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Anand hasn't really he hasn't started with what his interests are. Now, if asked, he would probably say their democracy, their opportunity, fairness, liberal values.
Mm-hmm.
But he should be able to articulate that, right? It would make him a lot more honest and understandable. And if he does it for himself, it would probably prevent him stepping over himself to, be a cheerleader for capitalism without trying to too. Some leftists do.
Mm-hmm.
They're cheerleading the Democratic Party even though they hate them, or they're cheerleading the as Douglas Lane kind of rants at other online lefties or social democrats. Like, you are cheerleading anti-democratic governance and the police state without like meaning to.
Yeah.
Because you see that Twitter bans the right wingers or something, and that's, that's okay. Or it's not a big deal that the left are being kicked off of Twitter or something.
Mm-hmm. Where's Amanda? Amanda is resting and doing other stuff. And she's also not technically a mother, although she's kind of a stepmother to my children. But I will let her know if you want to wish her a happy Mother's Day nonetheless, James. So, anyway, sorry, where were we?
Yeah. The moderator.
The moderator, yeah.
Peacemaker.
Thank you very much, Govinda. So, Amina, to you, Jason clearly thinks it's a lie to suggest that we need economic growth to achieve social progress. That's pretty harsh, but doesn't he have a point, though? He said that the growth at the top is captured by the very few. Is it 1%, I believe, a little more depending on which region of the world you look at. Anand also mentioned the fact that the world's top 26 billionaires earn more than the bottom 3.8 billion people in the world. That's capitalism for you, isn't it?
Well, as has been said, this is one form of capitalism. I am of the opinion that we still need growth, and for a country like mine with no resources, only the talent of our people, we have shown that we need growth to advance the economy. But as we are in this 21st century, with a growing population, with an aging population, with 25% of our youth who are unemployed or underemployed, how do you empower them, and how do you engage with them, and how do we actually build a future for them? And this is something that, we have been advocating, for example, the growth in 3 different sectors: the white economy, the blue economy, the green economy. But you'll need growth to fire up these 3 pillars. We have done very well on the service sector with the white economy, but how do we now engage with the blue economy, the green economy, without upsetting the balance of nature? Because we know that the blue economy is stood up by the ocean, and we know the challenges that we face with climate change, and the green economy, the renewables, where growth is still possible. But how do we engage these young people in these sectors of the economy and make this capitalistic system grow and work for all? It's possible, and we are showing the way. Many countries are doing it. You're talking about...
It really? I mean, you look at...
Which countries are making capitalism work for all? I'd love to find that country. But anyway.
She's talking about hers.
Yeah, oh yeah. Making it work for everybody, huh? Gotcha.
Well, not for the unemployed youth.
Right. Not really even for the workers, but
I'm hearing the problem. I'm not hearing the positives.
Yeah, just saying we got to do this, we got to do that. But yeah, kind of throwing it out into the abstract so that she doesn't have to come up with a real solution.
Classic politician.
The United States, and you live in the United States, we see a wave of young people galvanized around candidates.
Did you see that sigh of that girl?
Who are running on a platform that reverse economic inequality. We've all heard about AOC's Green New Deal. We also know about Bernie Sanders, who is self-described as a democratic socialist.
Yes.
I didn't realize
clearly,
Bernie
young
was
people
going to win the Qatar primary.
Well, clearly. He's got some followers here.
Improbable outcome.
No, but clearly, I mean, is it right to suggest that young people are okay with the capitalist system that they have?
But I think, again, this is something that we have to really look at capitalist system and the growth. And what models have shown, in fact, economists, Nobel Prize winners have shown...
I wonder if we look up Anand's writing about the 2016 and 2020 primary, would we see pro-Bernie opinions? He's a social democrat.
Yeah,
there's definitely... Was he a Bernie supporter? I probably doubt it.
You think?
I
You
doubt
think
it.
He probably wasn't even on board? then?
It'd
be interesting to know.
I predict that he was maybe a Warren head, maybe.
Oh yeah, the policy wonk, sure. Yeah. Welcome, Epic Prawn. Good to see you. How you doing tonight?
What is that emoji? That's a girl with a crown on her head?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
Cool. Looks cute.
Cool.
System whereby the 80% can still draw from the system the economy can share.
It's just not theirs.
And there are so many other models like this.
I think what we also need to do in this conversation is step back and define growth in a way that is not a banker's idea of growth, okay? Right now, the way the rules are set up, the way the scorecard is set up in the game, the activities you get positive credit for, GDP credit, because that's the scorecard we're using, are like if you cut down a tree and
capitalist growth, yes. We're talking about capitalist growth. That is the banker's growth.
Yeah.
So he wants a way of talking about growth that is not the capitalist growth. So it's a socialist or a social democratic growth.
Yeah, basically.
But how do you find?
How do you?
He is.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating when you watch forums of high-level ideas where the people who are speaking have not figured out their positions beforehand.
Right.
Like they're going to figure them out while they're there, or these discussions are part of the we're having a conversation. And that's something that reformists will always be. It's like, we're having a conversation. Oh, we're inspiring a conversation.
Yeah.
Never a solution. Never a platform.
Just keep the conversation
Never
going.
something that you'd
And
actually
just
have to
talk about
fight
it.
for.
Yeah.
Because you'd actually have to fight for it. You have to actually stand for it and risk something.
Yeah. 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 As I've been saying, he seems pretty uninformed.
Rack of ribs. That's
Yeah, there you go.
I could
Rack of
probably-
ribs and a nap. That's not a bad afternoon. All right. Let's see more of this dude.
Use wind energy, like you get the same number of points, if not less. If you extract oil from the planet, you get points. If you sell people medications for anxiety, you get points. But if you create an economy that makes people less anxious, you don't get points.
I mean, it just sounds like he wants carbon capture, but applied to everything, just like social credit points, I suppose.
No, he's talking about actually something with the second video I have. ESG ratings. That's what he's talking about.
Okay. ESG ratings. All right.
At least
There's
that's
been
the way
really
it's
interesting
shaken
initiatives
out in
of France
practice.
and elsewhere to rethink GDP so that we would actually have a growth scorecard that reflects the noble aspirations of having people have more calories when they need them and have less anxiety, and people would actually start to have a growth that reflects human flourishing and not resource extraction. I just don't think resource extraction is the only plausible definition of growth.
Are we placing too much on GDP? I mean, Bhutan back in the 70s moved away and rejected the notion of measuring progress through GDP. It moved to something called the GNH.
Yes.
But is that a practical measure? That's the gross national happiness, where you take into account so many different aspects of people's lives.
Yeah. In fact, there are a number of alternative measures we can use. There's a genuine progress indicator, which starts with GDP and then subtracts social and ecological negatives, right? And so we could do that. And of course, I emphasize that this is an important first step towards moving towards a post-growth economy. But we cannot be agnostic about what I'm saying is the important dimension of growth that we have to look at, which is resource use and energy use, right? Because that's what matters ecologically speaking. So yes, let's shift to an economy that focuses on what we actually want to achieve, definitely. But if resource use continues to grow in that economy in ecologically destructive ways, then that's a problem, and we have to face up to that. So, whatever we measure, I'm fine with that. But as long as we are bringing our resource use and energy use back down to within planetary boundaries, that is what a post-growth, post-capitalist economy looks like.
So let me bring in the audience. If you could please get ready to ask your questions. We've got 2 microphones on either side of the
Okay, here's where things
auditorium,
get
but before
spicy.
we get to
Really?
But please do go ahead to the microphones and we can get
Quite
started in a
yeah.
second. But just a very quick yes or no question to each of you. Do you all agree with Karl Marx's fundamental belief that capitalism inherently had negative side effects, evil side effects, and that it ultimately is going to collapse onto itself? Are we beginning to see the end of capitalism as we know it? Just a very quick yes or no. Anand?
Yes, but I think we can save it from itself and make a humane version of it.
We need a rethink of capitalism because the tools that have been used to make it, these are not the same tool that we use to solve the problems associated with it.
Jason?
That was a
I think
non-answer.
that capitalism was useful in some respects in the 20th century, but it's not suited for the 21st century, and we need to evolve and innovate towards something better.
All right, we've got a few people ready to ask questions. Let's go over to you.
I want to ask, in a constant development in the world currently, in a world of constant development, I want to ask, is infinite growth or economical growth possible in a finite world? Is it bound to stop at a certain point in time? Thank you.
And who is this question to? Shall we?
I would suggest to the lady in the
To Amina, a biodiversity scientist. Good question for you. Do you accept that any form of growth on a planet with finite resources is a problem?
Well, first of all, I'm not very happy with the term infinite growth. We need growth. We need growth. The resources are going to be limited. Yes,
So there's a stopping point.
Yeah.
So there's a stopping point. There's a limit. There's a stopping point. There's a goal.
Get to a steady state.
It'd be nice if that was included in her remarks, because that would be an actual contribution to the conversation.
We agree that there is only planet A, there's no planet B. But how do we now adapt the tools that we have to generate growth within the resource, within the limited resources that we have, because the resources are not infinite. How do we adapt, as I said just now, the tools that have generated capitalism? They're not the same tool that will solve the problem associated with capitalism. So we really need to relook at the way we are consuming. We need to relook at the way we are using and reutilizing the resources, recycling the resources. So these are some of the tools that we have to rethink, the concept we have to rethink to generate growth within the system where the resources are limited, it is not finite. And models, energy models, for example, the food consumption model, we have so many other models exist. The thinking is happening, it's on the go. But we really need to ensure that it is accessible and people buy into this idea.
All right, on to another question.
So she has no solutions at all. Just that we need to have solutions. We need to have those. We need to develop tools. We need to have different tools. They can't be the same tools as capitalist tools. But then she never says what they have to be, or what they could be, or what they should be, or anything about it. She's got nothing. So,
but she's definitely more articulate than your standard American politician, or maybe the same amount.
Not a high bar, but yes.
Maybe she's more confident or something. Or maybe I don't know.
No, she's definitely good at. She's had a lot of media training. You can tell. She will answer only the question she wants in a way that it's just vague enough that she always has wiggle room.
Question, please.
I don't like
Thank you. I have
your question. I'll substitute my own. It's not infinite growth.
Pretty much.
We need growth.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Just that reaction.
We need growth. We just need to realize that we have finite resources to produce growth.
And work within it. I could explain how I did it in my small fucking country with no extractive resources, right? I mean, think about like a game of Tropico, where there's no minerals to mine or oil deposits. You only have like the agricultural sector you could have maybe, and the fishing and then maybe you have the service. I mean, the economy she's talking about, you have a blue economy, which is about the ocean and fishing and growing stuff. I'm thinking about, like, as I'm listening to this, because I'm playing a ton of Tropico. I played a bunch today and actually beat a level too. That there are certain industries where there is the mines and the oil thing, like there's a number and it ticks down. There is a limit to how much you can extract. So what happens to your economy when you hit zero in all of those extractive areas? You pretty much, there are industries that, like, you can't make the pharmaceuticals unless you make the powerful placebos option where you make them out of sugar.
Otherwise
you make them out of oil. Yeah. Otherwise you make them out of oil.
That's funny.
But it's still pharmaceuticals. There's the can't make cars. The steel takes iron and coal. So the electronics, I think, is out because you need aluminum and gold.
Couldn't even do like canning or anything like that.
The plastics. No, the canning doesn't require any mineral resources. It's actually agricultural stuff.
Okay.
And then it goes out. So, but even yes, I know. Actually, I think if it was more complicated, you would need aluminum too.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Sure.
You can have it be very profitable when you wouldn't be making the big bucks. But I suppose that's where things go if you play a really long game, because I think the amount of resources they put in are such that you don't, even after 100 years of playing an island.
Sure. You can just keep extracting. Yeah.
But there is a limit. There is a set number though, so it does imply that it would run out if you went long enough.
Yeah, unlike SimCity, where you play for 30 years.
There's no extractive resources whatsoever in that.
Well, yeah, there was in the more recent version. You can like.
Well, Skylines, there's industries with things, but yes, there's no limit to it. Oh, I'm skipping.
Yeah, you skipped a little bit, but then you caught back up, so you're clear again. Skipping like a 90s CD on a pothole road. All right, let's hear some more of these. These questions.
The kids.
Good questions so far.
Kids are all right.
The kids are all right.
2 questions, 2 specific to 2 people. For you, Anand. It's a question evaluating the role of foreign aid in a country's economic growth. And to you, Madame Excellency, you talked about Africa being what it is now and moving forwards towards a greater growth. But my question to you is very specific, that how can other African countries develop if countries with double taxation agreements like Mauritius act as tax havens for multinational corporations?
Oh yeah.
Boom!
How's she going to wiggle out of this one?
All right, thanks for those questions. Let's start with Anand.
First of all, I'm disappointed you didn't also call me Your Excellency, but I'll deal with that. Look, one of the things that I write about in Winners Take All is the way in which billionaires, mostly in the West, mostly in America, use aid to various foreign countries, including in Africa, to whitewash their reputations. It's kind of a drive-through reputational laundromat to do this kind of thing. And the help to those countries is often real. Sometimes it's kind of fake and minimal, but sometimes it's real. I mean, those are real malaria nets being bought. Those are real medicines. But I think part of what that upholds and what those countries then become part of is a laundering of the reputation of plutocracy itself, not just of those individuals.
Yeah, I think if the investment, if Gates' money went into building net factories in the countries of interest, then that would be, even if you're going to say the local land baron to manage it,
right?
At least the factory's there to be nationalized later or whatever happens.
Sure.
But at least it's there in the means of making more nets.
Yeah. And it's hard to deny that any of these philanthropy things are good. Like there's plenty of great philanthropy that happens around the world, but the problem always remains that it is with essentially
he's
other
going
people's
into
money.
that. So just keep playing it. Then.
Oh, okay.
That's
Getting
what
ahead.
he's saying, obviously. Well, you can guess.
That on a global scale is punishing to those countries, that allows those rich people to hoard most of the resources, ends up hurting those countries a lot more than the genuinely good things that come to them. And so I think it's important to think about the way in which poor countries play this role in trying to do right by their people, but hurting their people by upholding plutocracy.
Thanks, Anand. Amina, the questions of tax
Thank you. The taxation. I wouldn't say that we are a tax haven. I say we have a very pragmatic tax system.
Yeah, of course
and the
you'd say
double
that.
taxation is jointly agreed by governments when they sign up. They sign up to a whole series of agreements where we have the double taxation agreement treaty that we have signed many African countries. Now, our taxation system is a win-win situation for countries which have signed up. And granted, there have been some issues, but I think we are very keen to operate in a system that is transparent, and we have been in the good books of many of the major multilateral organizations as well. So this is something that we find it works.
Shifting his eyes like.
We need to dig further and see where the lapses are, and so that we can remedy. But so far, it has been a very pragmatic way of operating.
A politician's response, no doubt. I would ask you, are you satisfied? But I do have to move on. Are you satisfied with the answer?
No. If it is true that Mauritius is not a tax haven, I just got to go make a quick call to my banker.
Yes. All right.
Change my bank account.
All right, let's go on to the next.
Hi, so my question is to the panel as a whole. While we can discuss or even conclude that today's most common version of capitalism is more harmful to the world than it is beneficial, given the fact that it is a model most of the world has followed for such a long time, and that it is so deeply entrenched in our countries and the minds of most people, is shifting to an entirely different or even a transformed model realistically possible at this point in time? How can we build the people power to rein these big corporations in, as Anand spoke of?
All right, shifting to another model, but what I suggest doing is taking a few questions at a time so that we can hear from the most of you.
I don't always like that, but
we'll
yeah, that means
taking multiple questions because
the favorite questions are going to be brought up.
Yeah,
and the ones they didn't want to answer are going to be swept under the rug.
Right. Unless you expect 3 different answers from each panelist, which is not what happens.
Yeah.
So I don't know why any moderator does this. To hear more, so at least hear the questions, so at least the questioners are heard, even if the questions aren't answered.
I suppose so.
So the problem with capitalism is that it's based on the principle that humans are selfish, and this somehow we think is our dominant value, and our system rewards it. So we have created incentives where sociopaths, for example, that are
By the way,
2% of the
like
world
that blouse.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Totally
That's
blouse.
That's cool.
It's kind of a half net, half,
patterned almost.
The pattern that you see in a mosque.
Sure.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Or, it's just Islamic.
25% of executives.
Arabic.
So the people in power right now do not represent the values of most people and what most of us want. So then how can we create a system that distinguishes between the types of growth, where we value positive contributions to society, and how could we implement that, given that the people in power do not want this system in place because they are benefiting from the current system right now?
All right.
Man, these are great questions.
Longer
you must take
question
this
though.
question now. And what would you say to the activists in this room, this young girl, and others like her, the Greta Thunbergs of this world, who want something different, who still believe that you are not thinking outside the capitalist box? What do you say to them?
The lady has mentioned something very, very interesting, the notion of self-interest. And I think if you look at Adam Smith's very famous quote, whether we owe our dinners to the brewers, to the bakers, and to the butchers, we don't owe him anything because he's operating out of self-interest. But this is again something that many models exist where the business, the industrialists themselves, they don't adhere to the fact that human beings are just naturally self-centered, right? And there are models where the industrialists themselves say, we trust our people, we believe in them, and we're going to empower them, and we're going to ensure that
Although in
the
Adam
system
Smith's
they're
day, I'm not sure anyone became a butcher out of the profit incentive. Like, oh, I can make the most. Well, actually, maybe in the Fiddler on the Roof in the village of Anatevka, the butcher was like the richest guy in town for some reason. But maybe because meat like sells more than tailoring services.
I suppose.
But the butcher doesn't become a butcher because I'm going to make a lot of money from this. It's like people need meat.
Yeah.
Or want meat. Not just want meat, they need meat in my village or my town. So I'm going to be the butcher. Or I like meat a lot, so I will work with meat, and I like working with meat.
Right.
There's other motivations. And I'm pretty sure Adam Smith wrote about them too. He wasn't just a one-track mind.
No.
It just comes don't trust singular quotes from things, even if it's Marx.
Yeah.
Because Douglas Lane was pointing out that you have this leftist who was like quoting. He said he was quoting Marx to make Marx sound like an idealist, but he was quoting a footnote within Capital of someone talking about Marx or what Marx was responding to, something idealistic.
Sure.
So you can make someone look like the opposite of who they really were. You can make socialists look like authoritarian capitalists if you quote us right, or lie about what we say. Obviously.
Well, yeah, that too.
Environment they work in is good, right? So by trusting them, by giving them the opportunities, you can bring the best out of people. So this model of exploitation, as we have already...
Where is this model? She keeps saying these really vague, vaguely
the different model.
There's other models. There's we could do things differently. But she's not.
Is it the cooperative model? Is it the social democratic model, which she gestures towards?
What these? I don't know. I really don't like.
Double taxation, though. I'm curious to know what that. I should have looked it up beforehand because I watched this twice now.
I don't know what that means either.
Already associated capitalism with may not be true in these circumstances. How many more? How do we get such models? But having said this, in terms of those who actually exploit the system, this is again where we need government, we need regulation, and we need to actually implement these, and they don't become be hijacked by the system. So we need to ensure that we get value.
But the government is not separate from capital.
Not a capitalist.
That's what's sort of like the government is not separate, though. Yeah. I guess that is my go-to thing when people speak of government and the private sector as being separate things that are antagonistic.
Right.
They are not.
They're not. No, it's set up. Government has been set up to.
In my office, we got hundreds of dollars worth of Christmas platters from the firms that we're reviewing projects for. They're not bribes because they're under $20, or they are $20. But we got a lot of cookies and platters and chocolate.
That's funny. Yeah, there's a coworker of mine who's a sales guy, and he cannot comprehend why the government agencies that he works with will not allow him to take them out for lunch to these big, lush, elaborate lunches, and why they're always like, "Oh, we can't do that. That's against the rules," and stuff like that. He cannot get it through his head that government doesn't operate that, or is not supposed to operate that way.
Yeah.
So
he usually doesn't, unless you're elected representative, and that way you're a free agent. And that's where the legislative aides are kind of in a pickle when they're trying to unionize, as I've been told they are in New York, looking to. And their bosses, the representatives, are not classified as state employees. And I suppose neither are they. Although, actually, now I think about it, yeah. No, when you apply, you're not doing it through civil service when you're a state aid. You're doing it like it's like a private sector job.
Interesting.
So they're unionizing like they need to unionize like it's a private sector job. Which is odd because their bosses, their managers are all separate people.
Yeah.
So it's like they'd be sharing a union, but they're all technically like in different competing sections, Like,
right, yeah. Huh. That does sound complicated.
All right, let's get 2 more questions if we can. If there's any question for Jason and Anand, please, let's go ahead.
This isn't even working. Okay. So we've had these talks about how growth, Jason, you've spoken really greatly about how growth cannot happen if we continue to be consumers. And so, besides the fact that we need to come together as a people and rein in these big corporations, that needs to come with a better civics education, which most of us do not have. And that can often, and call me a conspiracy theorist, come at the hands of the fact that governments are often sitting in the pockets of these grand corporations. So, if anyone wants to rally outside, let me know. Point is, my question is for Jason. Yes. Can there be ethical consumerism under capitalism?
All right, hold that thought for a second. One more question.
Go right ahead. My question is for Anand. You said in the beginning of your speech when you were talking that this is more capture than capitalism that we're experiencing in the world, and that there are different forms of capitalism, but even some of the better forms of capitalism, such as Canada or France, are built upon the backs of selling weapons to countries that are using it to starve people in Yemen. Or that, let's not forget the fact that capitalism was built upon the backs of the transatlantic slave trade. So is there any way of distinguishing capitalism from its history and its present? Because even if we're claiming a welfare state, we're still selling weapons to autocrats in other parts of the world to kill human beings. So is there a good capitalism ever?
So the hypocrisy, as you say,
I think it's
very often, Anand, just in a minute if we can, as we have to go to another vote.
It's such an important question, but I think we can't allow the abuse of a system to define a system, because we allow the abusers to be the powerful in that case. I went to the local souk here yesterday.
That would be true if it had ever been different. But capitalism
I think the idea behind that rhetoric is the potential or the possibility that the system could be democratic, that it could be our system, or rather that because we live in it, it should be considered our system, but the injustice is that it isn't.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
the revolutionary understands that it was never our system.
No, never intended to be, never operated that way.
Plymouth
never has
Rock,
been.
we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
On top of us. Yeah, there you go. But it's true. Yeah, that's it. That's how the system was set up. It was
Jet extremists with the dickoos.
Hey, how's it going, Jet?
Why the
How you been?
dickoos?
I don't know.
Midoriya's. Okay, go on.
let's continue. Almost done here.
People selling stuff for a higher price than they
I know it would
bought
take the whole 3 hours.
And I have no problem with the transaction those people were engaging in. And what I'm suggesting is you are absolutely right. Many of the worst evils in history are inextricable from capitalism, the abuse of capitalism. But I don't think that indicts someone in the market here in Doha trying
There's
to
a good
sell
capitalism that isn't abused, It's,
yeah.
But again, that's just a liberal point of view, that there's a capitalism where there's a fair, competitive, regulated market, and it's meritocratic, and it's fair.
Yeah, and doesn't exploit
it's a fucking
foreign people around the world, and
it's an illusion. And maybe it's just as much as an illusion as a ecological socialist economy.
It could be.
But at least we know that. Well, we've been doing it the way that it could be this and it isn't, or rather no one's saying, unless they're a Fox News anchor, is saying that we could have an ecological socialism if it just weren't for those people at the top or something.
Right.
We say it's the whole thing. And liberals never say it's the whole thing. It's this minority.
One part that's not working right. Yeah.
We need a little more regulation.
Yeah.
A big structural Bailey.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's keep going.
All right.
For 20% more than they bought it, or 200% more, maybe, as the case seemed to be. And so I want to separate the abuse from the possibility of saying, yes, it is fine that most people need to make a living and sell things at a higher price than they buy them, but that should not rule us. That should not be an ideology that dupes us. That should not justify
By the way,
exploitation.
Jason responds to this, so we don't have to.
Okay.
And I must interrupt you. Forgive me, just in the brief minute that we have before we go to the vote, Jason.
Was it okay if I jump in on the carpet seller idea here? Because, in fact, I'm not sure that's the best example of what capitalism is, in fact, right? So what that is it's a way of exchanging goods and services that humans have been doing forever. But capitalism is a recent phenomenon, only a couple of 100 years old, right, that is organized around perpetual, indefinite growth. So the purpose for the carpet seller is to sell enough to have enough money to feed his children and put them through school, et cetera, right? Not in order to expand into a global empire and force us all to buy carpets by advertising aggressively on Facebook to buy carpets we don't need and don't even really want.
Jason, thank you. Amin, I'll come to you in a minute, but give me a second. Yeah, just give me a second if you would.
I think some of the stores did have Facebook stickers on the outside.
It's hard to stop this conversation, but give me just a second.
Just 1 second about the ethical consumerism, right? Okay. And ethical consumerism, again, it can be regulated through certification. This is where consumers have a key role to play because they can make or they can break.
All right. Okay. Well, we heard the arguments, and I'm sorry to have to cut them short, but let's see if anyone in the audience and those people online watching us have actually bought into them. Let's do a quick second vote.
So yeah, just quickly. Yeah, what was the point of taking all those questions if you only had time for one more anyway? I don't know.
To hear the questions.
I guess just to hear the questions. You could have put them up, like flash them on that giant screen behind you or something like that. Here's questions we couldn't get to or something like that, but I don't know. Minor point anyway.
It's the format. It's the 1 hour format.
Del, tell us what else you're hearing out there.
I mean, it's getting quite hot in here. There's a lot of opinions being shared, but I've got to say, Rida, people are watching from
all over the world.
We've got here
all over the world.
Canada, from California, from Lebanon, in Qatar as well, and lots of people are gathering around that point that Dr. Clayton made, which is we need to make sure that we all are saying the same things when we're saying certain terms. So when we're talking about capitalism, what do we mean? When we're saying growth, what do we mean? Because people are confused about whether you agree, Jason and Anand, or disagree. There seems to be some sort of conflation going on. I'll tell you roughly just some of the tweets that caught my eye, and thank you guys again for using that hashtag Dear World at Doha Debates. One of my favorites so far is one from Lebanon. It's Paladin, who describes himself as a bit of a debater online. And he said, we need heavily regulated capitalism if it is going to work at all. The system is rigged to the ultra-wealthy. So I think there's a point for Jason there. I'm just going to give you one more that I really love. We've got...
Well, that's a point too, to be fair.
Yeah. Hello, guys. Thank you for tuning in. And a really good point made here by Ron van der Sturen. And he says, capitalism is not suited for the 21st century and needs to evolve. So that word evolve keeps coming up. The idea of corruption.
It was argued it wasn't suited for the 20th century either.
Very important. And we've got some people who are commenting on Instagram as well.
Led to some big wars.
All right, very quick one, actually. We do have the results now.
Oh, brilliant. I'll be very quick. The two words that seem to be most important on Instagram are power and accountability, which is something that I hope our speakers can talk to in their closing arguments. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks so much, Nell. Let's
back to you now.
Look and see if anything.
Take it back to Mo.
Back to you in the studio.
This discussion. So that was the earlier vote, as you remember, Anand, with more than.
You'll like this.
Of the vote, 24 and 20 for Jason.
Hey. So
I
good
have to say,
job.
Jason, your position has really taken off. Growth is killing us, top growth. That is something that has really resonated, as you can tell, 44%. And yours has gone down.
The guy who's against growth is the only guy who grew.
But I mean, you still have a lot of work to do to convince everyone here. So very quickly, in a minute or less each, 30 seconds would even be better, what would you say are the sacrifices that we all have to make, big and small, to make this alternative system work?
Yeah, I don't think this is about us making personal sacrifices necessarily. Okay, I mean, of course, we need to consume less in our personal lives, but that's not going to solve the problem. What we need to do is organize to create a fundamentally different kind of economy, one that is fundamentally fairer, more just, and more ecological. And that's not going to happen if we sit alone in our flats and try to consume better. Okay, we need to build political movements, bring new ideas into the mainstream, and build a fundamentally better economy.
All right, Amina, young people they crave this other system, more fair, more equitable, more inclusive. Are you still going to tell them that the answer lies in capitalism?
The answer lies in capitalism. We need to have growth so as to generate the resources, but the bottom line is that we need to have a shared practice of sharing the fruit of the growing economy.
Anand, your priority?
Well, that practice could
Don't
be
click.
socialism.
Join.
Could be.
Right.
It is the construction of people power that is too overwhelming for plutocrats and corrupt leaders that will truly change the future. And we think we're civically active when we're online. We're not. Join something.
Yes.
Okay, well, a very, very good note on which to end this debate. Thank you to all of our fantastic guests, Jason, Amina, and Anand. And of course, thank you all for joining us with your questions, thoughts, and ideas. Thank you for being here. Thanks to the Qatar Foundation. Let's continue this conversation online, obviously on Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram and YouTube and learn more about our other topics this season by going to dohadebates.com.
All righty.
Tony,
that
takeaways.
That was pretty good. I ended up liking his presentation of degrowth, and I especially liked at the end when he finally said, no, it's not about sacrifice, it's not about doing with less, it's about fundamentally changing the way that we produce stuff that is not centered on endless, mindless growth and destruction of people and the planet. So yeah, it's good. That was a good debate.
And not tying it to a particular political project, i.e. eco-socialism, which personally he would say that's his project. Like, it's a totally another hour-long thing that I don't suggest because I don't think it's entertaining enough. But obviously, listening at work or on your own time. Give me a sec. I'll plug it in so you can link it as supplementary material.
I never shared the original video in the chat either, so I'll go ahead and do that.
Let's see. Oh, maybe I didn't. Oh, no, it's in watch later.
Socialism is no cell phones. That's funny, chat.
Okay, here it is. It's a panel put on by Haymarket.
Oh, cool.
So he's one of the panelists with some other eco-socialists. Debating Eco-Socialist Futures, it's called.
Nice.
So you have a Drew Pendergrass, Half-Earth Socialism. Andrea, the future is degrowth, so it's just degrowth in general. Oh, wait. It doesn't have his name on it, but I thought he was involved with this one. Climate Change is Class War by Matthew Huber. And yeah, that's strange. I thought he was in this one. Maybe he's in a different one I have saved.
Not the right one.
So I have... It's not going to be that one. All right. Well, if you just do a search for Jason, you will find other panels he's been on with other lefties.
Nice.
So for the next one, I think, well, we're pretty much out of time, but we can laugh at the third video I put in the private chat.
Okay.
Is a surprise.
Okay. I'll put it up real quick, but then we gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
While we have to scratch our heads over the conspiracy that Marxism is being spread by big corporations like Facebook and Amazon, so-called corporate communism has nevertheless entered the public discourse. In fact, right-wing supporters actively promote the idea of corporate communism as part of cultural Marxism in the US. Prominent Republicans espouse this concept whenever they need to attack the platforms of capitalist monopolies. In this video, we will examine the concept of corporate communism and provide a real answer to this question. References to corporate communism
I have not
aren't new.
pre-watched.
In 2009, Democrat journalist and author Dylan Ratigan
Well, buckle up,
coined the
Jet,
phrase
because this guy's
corporate
going to explain
communism. Ratigan defines communism as an economic system that allows a small group of people to control society's resources. At the same time, it restricts freedom and competition. U.S. politicians
It's the
such as
minority
Martin Taylor Greene
controlling the
have made
economy.
reference to the concept.
It's coming from private companies. So I have a term
That's
for
how
that.
they
I
get
call it
that.
corporate communism. These are private corporations, but yet they are adapting these communist policies just like the Democrats are, and they are pushing them on us.
However, such an
Okay.
understanding is so far from reality that we must take a deeper look into the ideological effect that this concept has. Modern corporations are large capitalist enterprises created specifically by the development of world capitalism. They have great control over industries, markets, and the national economy based on a great concentration of production and capital in order to establish monopolistic prices and extract monopolistic profits. Dominance in the national economy is the basis of the influence that monopolies have on all spheres of life in modern countries. The formation and growth of monopolies are historically linked with the development of freely competitive capitalism into monopoly capitalism. This process started in the second half of the 19th
Started that,
century.
huh? Okay.
In his work, Capital, Karl Marx articulated this capitalist economic principle in the following way. The battle of competition is fought by cheapening of commodities. The cheapness of commodities depends on the productiveness of labor.
I guess
and
this guy's
again,
a comrade. I mean, if he's quoting Marx non-ironically. You know.
on the scale of production. Therefore, the
Yeah,
larger
market tyranny.
capitals beat the smaller. Further, the credit system, which begins as a modest
man.
helper of accumulation, soon becomes a new and formidable weapon in the competitive struggle.
Well, when
and
no one's in
finally,
charge, it's like everyone's in charge. Or I think when what Pim Tool is thinking of when he says anarcho tyranny, I think he's thinking of the tyranny of the active or the tyranny of the loudest person. So if you don't have a checks and balances republicanism at play, then and it's the rule by the mob or
Yeah.
a direct democracy, you're left with the bias of those who have the most education or have the most resources. So, which is anarcho-capitalism or something, or plutocracy, you know. It's just obviously based on a confusion of what anarchism is and what
Yeah, I
tyranny
think
is.
it's just a different way of saying mob rule, or all these other scare terms that they talk about when they're like less democracy, less democracy.
Yeah, but
please.
the thing that I'm getting, and I'll probably, it'll take me time to read the whole book and then kind of gesticulate it into a set of talking points, is from Wisdom of Crowds, which is that crowds are in fact very wise and rational, but they need to be independent and free of bias. There needs to be certain qualities at play. When we think of mob rule, we're thinking of a crowd or the masses, but they are influenced or pressured by material conditions.
Yeah.
Referring to production, ownership, and where they're getting their information. If they're getting their information independently or collectively, whatever, and like he has like these 4 or 5 criteria that make a crowd smart versus dumb. But usually when we're thinking about a dumb crowd or an irrational crowd, we're actually talking about one person exerting their will over that crowd.
Yeah, basically.
You know, a moral panic is not caused by a crowd just standing around. It's caused by one person saying something to their interests,
terrible,
which is that one's a witch.
Right? Yeah. That's anarcho tyranny. Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it here tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna cut it. Okay.
But yeah, if you want to finish up the video.
So I'm doing my show. I am doing my show more often now as I'm resigning from being a union officer in a business union. Doesn't mean I'm going to shift to IWW work, but it will mean that I'll be able to, since it's not a conflict of interest anymore. I'll still be in my union, CSCA, which is still an AFL-CIO member. Not that that means too much, but so starting my new job at the end of the month. So Memorial Day weekend, maybe we do this again. You can check in if you are not able.
Sure.
I don't have any firm plans.
Yeah, I don't think I do at this moment either, but
we'll work from there. All right. But hey, it's great that we actually had 3 followers in the chat.
We had up to 5 viewers at a time. So
5
got up to 5 for a little while there.
Oh yeah, did they only commented once, but did
that other person never came back.
Glazy stuck around.
They were upset that I wouldn't let them talk for 10 minutes, and then they said nothing after that statement. So whatever.
Well, they could have said, yeah. What the hell?
Yeah, how come I got a 10-minute cooldown as soon as I follow?
Well, now you can. Now you can. Buttercup, come on, jeez.
So I don't know. Maybe it was a bot or a troll after all. But
whatever.
Anyway.
Well, their picture was Biden.
Really? I didn't even notice that.
Okay, happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Happy Mother's Day.
I'm gonna go make
until
dinner.
next time. Thanks, Dan. A lot of fun.
Bye.
All right, thank you all for watching. Let's see. Who's even on right now? I have 2 of the people that I usually raid into in chat right now. So it looks like neither of you is streaming right now. So I'm thinking, unless you guys got a better suggestion, that we will raid into Real Radham, who's another cool guy. Real Rad, hey. You know, great minds think alike, right? So yeah, let's do Radham. Thank you all for joining. It's always a lot of fun. And yeah, see you guys next time. I'll probably be doing tomorrow night A People's History of the United States. So if you're into depressing but important history of the United States, we finally made it past the Civil War era. So we're moving on to the post-war era and more times of the beginnings of labor organization in the country. So that'll be exciting. Yeah, Jetterprawn, go live fast. Oh, 1 year? Good job, Jet. Congrats on that. That's a big milestone. Way to keep it up for a whole year. That's amazing. Yeah, I should shout out you guys before I go as well. So everyone check out Epic Prawn and also Jet. Let me shout you out real quickly. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for stopping by. I'll make sure I spell it exactly as it appears. So there is, oh wait, it's all one word, right? Prawn, let's hope that one worked. There we go. There's one shout out down. And now we'll get Jet going. And then we'll get out of here, raiding into Radham. Never heard of you. All right. Well, again, thank you all. Hope to see you all tomorrow night for some more People's History of the United States. In the meantime, I leave you with Real Rad Hom, a based comrade from the Australian region of this world. Let's see. I have to open my dashboard. That might help with the raid, wouldn't it? All right. Well, they've changed everything around. Here we go. Raid starting now. I swear. Here it goes.